Chapter 966. The gigantic mystic courtyard was silent. The cultivators looked at the messy battlefield in a daze. They looked at the tall and terrifying figure in the middle of the battlefield and forgot to breathe for a moment. If the cultivators had not witnessed such an outcome personally, who would have believed it? The nascent soul paragon of Snowdrift Valley, Ling Bai, was dumbfounded. His eyes were filled with shock, and the only thing left in his mind was what Fairy Luo Shui had said just now. Since he was here, there was nothing to fear at the Thousand Crane Tea Party unless the Dharma Dao Jun appeared. His prophecy came true. The encirclement of 8 void reversions was destroyed by this person with ease. 6 void reversions died and 2 were severely injured. This was the number 1 perfected lord. Amidst their shock, Nangong Ling, Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian suddenly thought of something. Back then, they were in danger outside Wind Cloud City and were kidnapped by the Dharma Dao Jun of Hellfire Hall and 7 void reversions. Thereafter, they returned safely. Initially, the 3 of them thought that it was done by some peerless expert. But now, it seemed like that peerless expert was most likely Su Zimo. Su Zimo is truly a fiend demon. That's right. He's completely exposed and can't hide it any longer. What fiend demon is that? Just now, why didn't the demon-revealing mirror reflect his true form? Gradually, whispers began to spread from the crowd. Instinctively, the cultivators looked at the Chigaramon patriarch, Arakatsuki Michinoku, at the top. At that moment, Arakatsuki Michinoku's expression was extremely terrible. Just now, 8 void reversions attacked at the same time. However, she chose to ignore them and watch from the sidelines. In fact, she even closed her eyes. She had it all planned out. Su Zimo had already offended many super sects, and the only one backing him was the declining 100 Refinement sect. The 100 Refinement sect could not even protect themselves, so how could they protect Su Zimo? Even if Su Zimo fell here, it was nothing. No one would find trouble with her, and Chigaramon would not be implicated. That way, there would be an explanation for the deaths of Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglon and the others. However, not long after she closed her eyes, she heard an ancient howl that shook the heavens and earth. Even her mind began to waver. Dragon roar? Arakatsuki Michinoku froze for a moment, unable to react. Inside this mystic courtyard, why would there be a dragon roar sounding out? She instinctively opened her eyes and saw this scene. 2 void reversion realm monks of the Buddhist sect had fallen with heavy injuries, and monk Xianming had died. The void reversions of Chaos Essence sect, Sword sect and Hellfire Hall had just died as well. A tall and muscular body that emitted a terrifying aura had already arrived before Dao Being Chi Gai and the void reversion of Sword sect. Dragons? Arakatsuki Michinoku's heart skipped a beat. Although the tall figure before her did not take on the form of dragons, the aura he exuded was no different from dragons. That single delay caused the void reversion of Sword sect to die and be killed by the Illumination Dragon Eye. Immediately after, Dao Being Chi Gai was killed by this person as well. It was only at that moment that Arakatsuki Michinoku realized that the tall figure with dragon scales and red and black eyes was Su Zimo. It was too late. In the blink of an eye, the battle was over and the dust had settled. Arakatsuki Michinoku stood up slowly and exuded an extremely powerful might that suppressed over. She summoned the demon-revealing mirror in reverse. A pillar of light shone down and enveloped Su Zimo. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and his 2 essence spirits separated. The scarlet-haired Een spirit hid and the black-haired essence spirit continued to guard his consciousness. Crackle! In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo returned to normal and turned into that handsome cultivator with clear, pitch-black eyes. Even though he was enveloped by the demon-revealing mirror, his expression was indifferent. This change made Arakatsuki Michinoku feel like she was being toyed with. Her expression had completely darkened. Su Zimo, I don't care if you're a human or a demon. If you dare to kill at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, it's equivalent to, Patriarch. Before Arakatsuki Michinoku could finish, she was interrupted by Su Zimo. Everyone present can see the reason why I killed. Everyone has their own opinions on what's right and wrong. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo continued, furthermore, This conflict could have been avoided. Since someone turned a blind eye and stood by idly, don't blame me for starting a massacre. Are you blaming me? Arakatsuki Michinoku narrowed her gaze and asked murderously with a frosty expression. Her patience had already been exhausted. For the Thousand Crane Tea Party to develop to such an extent, it could be considered a complete failure. However, the root of this failure pointed to a single person. It was Suzumo before her. I can't say that I'm blaming you. However, I do have something to say to Patriarch. Suzumo glanced at Lung Ro beside him and nodded before raising his voice. Patriarch Lanyue, it's fine if you want to make use of the marriage alliance to befriend Chaos Essence Sect and obtain their support. However, you should at least respect Lung Ro's intentions. What did you say? Arakatsuki Michinoku hollered guiltily. It was one thing for everyone to know that this was not honorable. However, it was another thing for him to say it in public. None of the cultivators present are fools. Who can't tell what Patriarch is thinking? Suzumo said indifferently, Lung Ro is a disciple of the Chiguramon and it's not wrong for her to be your disciple. However, you have no right to decide Lung Ro's future. You're pushing her into a pit of fire. Lung Ro looked at Suzumo and the coldness in her eyes dissipated. She knew that Suzumo was speaking up for her and standing up for her. Those words were from the bottom of her heart, but she did not dare to say them out loud. Lung Ro could not imagine what would have happened to her if not for Suzumo. Suzumo shook his head and smiled mockingly. Furthermore, the facts have proven that you have poor taste. Yi Tiancheng is not an impressive monster incarnate either. I've already killed him. The reason why you're interested in Chaos Essence Sect is because of the two paragons that rose in this generation. Now that one of them is dead, the other won't live for long either. Suzumo, let's see how long more you can be arrogant. A perfected lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and said in a deep voice, Patriarch of Lanyue, Suzumo is no doubt a fiend demon. He massacred human cultivators wantonly at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. If you don't give us an explanation, the immortal sects will definitely not let this matter rest. Perfected Lord Sword Formation mustered his courage and declared loudly, I've already released the messenger spirit Crane. Once Sword Sect receives the news, the Dharma Daojun will definitely descend personally. At that time, let's see how the Chiguramon will explain themselves. That's right. The Perfected Lord of Heavenly Dipper Sect grit his teeth. Dharma characteristic experts of our sect will rush over immediately as well. Master, you can't. Lung Ro said hurriedly, there's nothing unusual about Suzumo under the demon revealing mirror. He's a human. Just now, it might just be a secret skill that he's cultivating. Furthermore, he's not to blame for this at all. Fairy Luo Shui stood out as well and cupped her fists. Patriarch of Lanyue, don't forget that Chiguramon owes Suzumo a huge favor in Myriad Phenomenon City 100 years ago. Arakatsuki Michinoku's gaze was cold and she remained silent. The cultivators glanced sideways, waiting for her attitude. Her attitude would determine Suzumo's life and death. Chapter 967. Arakatsuki Michinoku was expressionless. So many people had died at the Thousand Crane Tea Party this time round, and each of them had a greater background than the other. Even 7 void reversions had died. There was no way she could escape responsibility. If she did not handle this properly, even Chiguramon would be implicated. However, Chiguramon was indebted to Suzumo. If she were to kill Suzumo here right now, Chiguramon would definitely be labeled as an ingrate and cause endless criticism. Arakatsuki Michinoku's thoughts raced as she came up with a plan. Suzumo, if not for the fact that you've done Chiguramon a favor in the past, I would definitely kill you here for what you've done today. I won't let you off. Arakatsuki Michinoku's voice was cold. However, Lung Ro, Little Fatty and the others were delighted when they heard that. In other words, Arakatsuki Michinoku did not seem like she was prepared to attack Suzumo. Pausing for a moment, Arakatsuki Michinoku changed the topic. However, you've caused a huge disaster today. Even I, Chiguramon, can't protect you. I've repeatedly reminded you to restrain yourself. You're the one who refused to listen. You can't blame anyone else. A mocking look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he said indifferently, Patriarch, there's no need to beat around the bush. Just say what you have to say. Arakatsuki Michinoku took a deep breath and said calmly, I won't kill you, but you can't leave Chigurumon either. Stay here and continue being a guest. A commotion broke out in the crowd. What a ruthless move. How ruthless. On the surface, she didn't attack Su Zimo. However, if she imprisons him here, Su Zimo won't be able to escape death when the Dharma characteristic experts of Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect and Heavenly Dipper Sect arrive. In that case, Chigurumon can be considered as giving Chaos Essence Sect and the other immortal sects an explanation. Furthermore, most importantly, Arakatsuki Michinoku did not attack Su Zimo and won't be labeled as an ingrate. What a way to kill someone with a borrowed knife. All the cultivators present who could cultivate to the nascent soul realm were not fools. They quickly understood what Arakatsuki Michinoku was thinking and began discussing softly. Su Zimo. Su Zimo chuckled and asked instead, Why? You want to detain me in Thousand Crane Sect? Junior, you should know what's good for you. Arakatsuki Michinoku replied indifferently, As the Patriarch, I'm inviting you to stay in Chigurumon for a few days. Furthermore, you're best friends with Lung Ro and haven't seen each other for 100 years. I'm sure you have a lot to talk about and I can fulfill your wish. Master, shut up. The moment Lung Ro opened her mouth, she was interrupted by Arakatsuki Michinoku with a glare. How pretentious. A look of mockery flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he sneered, Arakatsuki Michinoku, you don't have any of the righteousness of the immortal sects at all. You've learned 100% of how to be a hypocrite and cunning. Su Zimo retracted his smile and asked slowly, What if I insist on leaving? Then don't blame me for not being courteous and suppressing you here. Arakatsuki Michinoku said coldly, Junior, since we've already said this, I advise you to take care of yourself and suffer less. The Dharma Daojuan's aura descended slowly and enveloped the entire mystic courtyard. Jinying Zhenjuan felt as though he was carrying a towering mountain on his back and could not move at all. Ha! Su Zimo roared with laughter. Even in the face of the Dharma Daojuan's aura, he was still full of pride and shouted, Listen up, Lanyue. Although I can't defeat you if I, Su Zimo, want to leave, you can't stop me. His pride was soaring. It was already rare for Jinying Zhenjuan to be able to remain neither servile nor overbearing against the Dharma Daojun despite the difference of two major cultivation realms. The cultivators did not even dare to think about challenging the Dharma Daojuan's might directly like Su Zimo. However, that was not a bluff on Su Zimo's part. Indeed, he was no match for the Dharma Daojun in a head-on fight. Back then, he killed the Dharma Daojun of Hellfire Hall because the latter was at the end of his lifespan and was on the verge of death. Otherwise, his Baron would not have been able to kill the latter. Right now, there were 3 Dharma Daojun in the mystic courtyard with exuberant blood chi. It was clear that they were at their peak. Su Zimo's Baron had a negligible effect on the 3 Dharma Daojun. However, he had many trump cards. With the fusion of his 2 essence spirits and the help of the Mingwang prayer beads, he could break free from the Dharma Daojuan's suppression for a short period of time. Even the Dharma Daojun would not be able to stop him if he released blood escape. Junior, you've provoked me repeatedly. Today, I'll teach you a lesson. Arakatsuki Michinoku's gaze turned cold and his glabella shone. He was prepared to attack personally. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he was about to release blood escape as well. Hold on. Right then, a soft shout sounded from the distant skies, interrupting the tense atmosphere in the mystic courtyard. Everyone turned to look. 3 cultivators flew over from the horizon. One of them was a middle-aged man who was relatively young. The other 2 cultivators were old men with white hair and beards. They looked like they were in their twilight years, but they were hale and hearty with rosy cheeks. It's Master! Nangong Ling, Yu Han Yun and Ru Xian's eyes lit up as they exclaimed. Among the 3 cultivators, the middle-aged man was their master, Dao Lord Scarlet Star. However, they did not recognize the 2 old men beside Dao Lord Scarlet Star. Apart from Dao Lord Scarlet Star, the 2 old men were also at the Dharma characteristic realm. Dharma Daojun of 100 Refinement Sect is here first. Seems like he's going to take Su Zimo away. Fufu, how can it be that easy? Don't forget, this is the Chiguramon. If Arakatsuki Michinoku doesn't agree, the 3 Dharma Daojun want to take him away? See, this is going to be interesting. The cultivators discussed animatedly with excited expressions. In the blink of an eye, Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the 2 old men arrived in the mystic courtyard. Looking at the messy courtyard and the many broken corpses that hadn't been cleaned up in time, a trace of shock flashed through the eyes of the 3 of them. When Tao Lord Scarlet Star caught sight of Yi Tiancheng's corpse, his pupils constricted. However, he calmed down before long, as though he was prepared for the scene before him. What happened next was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The crowd that was initially silent exploded instantly. Under countless gazes, Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and arrived before Su Zimo. He bowed slightly and said softly, "Uncle Master, I'm late." The crowd was in an uproar. Most of the cultivators present had more or less heard of Tao Lord Scarlet Star's name. Even if they had not heard of him, Tao Lord Scarlet Star was a Dharma characteristic expert after all. But now, he was bowing respectfully to Jining Jinjuan. What was going on? The cultivators at the scene were astounded. Even Nangong Ling and the other 2 were stunned. The 3 of them knew that Tao Lord Scarlet Star was unwilling to acknowledge Su Zimo as his uncle master from the bottom of his heart. Back then, he had only braced himself and agreed reluctantly to address Su Zimo as little uncle master. Furthermore, in order to protect his dignity, Su Zimo had once said that he could address him by his name if there were outsiders around. To think that Tao Lord Scarlet Star would do such a thing in front of everyone with so many major factions gathered. Nangong Ling and the other 2 did not see any hint of unwillingness on Tao Lord Scarlet Star's face. To be precise, when Tao Lord Scarlet Star found out about Su Zimo's true identity from Hakara Dojin, he was willing to address the latter as Uncle Master. The reason why he was respectful to Su Zimo was not because of seniority. It was because the young man before him was worthy of his respect. Chapter 968. No wonder you're so fearless. So, you have helpers. Arakatsuki Michinoku had a calm expression and sneered. Scarlet Star, the 3 of you Dharma Daojun want to take someone away from me? The 3 of us are enough. Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and looked at Arakatsuki Michinoku with a calm voice. Arakatsuki Michinoku sneered again. This is Chiguramon. As long as I give the order, the 3 of you will have to stay here. Lass, you're too arrogant. Among the 3 of them, an old man with a walking stick stood out with a dignified aura. Another old man asked in a deep voice, Lass, where's your master? Arakatsuki Michinoku frowned and flicked his sleeves. Who are you guys? Do you think you can meet my master just because you want to? Elder Gu? Right then, the void reversion of Ancient Array sect shouted in disbelief with a shocked expression. Yes, nodding, the old man with the crutch looked at the void reversion of Ancient Array sect and nodded. Little monkey, it's you. It's me, the void reversion nodded and bowed hurriedly, leaning forward and bowing. This person had a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks. Little Monkey was his pet name and not many people knew about it. Grandpa Gu? Right then, Tang Yu of Elixir Yang sect blinked her eyes and exclaimed. Tang Yu ran over and took a closer look. She could not help but laugh. Grandpa Gu, it's really... I didn't even dare to recognize you at first. Little Tang, how old are you now? Why do you still like to pretend to be a young master? Old man Gu had a doting expression and chuckled as well. Grandpa Gu, weren't you in seclusion? Why are you here? Tang Yu asked curiously. Old man Gu retracted his smile and said indifferently, I've been in seclusion for a long time and my body is a little rusty. I came out for a walk and meet an old friend. Arakatsuki Michinoku frowned slightly. For some reason, he suddenly felt uneasy. Tao Lord Scarlet Star raised his voice. Lan Yu, may I ask where Senior Shangguan is? I've said it before, my master is in seclusion. Arakatsuki Michinoku said coldly. Tao Lord Scarlet Star harumphed. Lan Yu, I came here before the tea party because I had something to discuss with Senior Shangguan. In the end, you rejected me. What are your intentions? It was only at that moment that Su Zimo, Nangong Ling and the others found out that Tao Lord Scarlet Star had been to Chigurumon a few days ago. However, he didn't see the person he wanted to see and returned empty-handed. Chigurumon, I'm the patriarch. I can make all the decisions. Arakatsuki Michinoku's gaze flickered and his voice turned colder. There was already a hint of anger in his tone that could be vented at any moment. Elder Gu, who was leaning on his walking stick, said slowly, Lass, tell Shangguan that old friends of Elixir Yang sect and Ancient Array sect are here to visit her. She'll naturally come out of seclusion. Old friends? Fufu? Arakatsuki Michinoku sneered. With all due respect, I've met all of my master's old friends. However, I've never met the two of you. We've known your master for thousands of years. At that time, you didn't exist yet. Elder Gu blew his beard and was getting impatient. Arakatsuki Michinoku's expression darkened completely as he said coldly, What a joke! If any random cultivator claims to be my master's old friend and wants to meet her, wouldn't my master be annoyed to death? Scarlet Star, I've tolerated you guys on account that you're from the unorthodox sections. If you guys push your luck again, don't blame me for being merciless. Arakatsuki Michinoku slapped his storage bag and tossed out a pink spirit crane that turned into a streak of light that shot into the air. A gigantic crane appeared and cried into the skies. A crisp and clear cry of a crane echoed through the entire Chigurumon. Lung Ro's expression changed. This was a signal to gather all Dharma characteristic experts of the sect. Apart from those in seclusion, everyone else could see it. Bang, bang, bang. A series of powerful auras burst forth from every corner of the Chigurumon as figures rushed into the skies one after another. Before long, dozens of Dharma Daojun descended. All of them had unfriendly expressions and surrounded the mystic courtyard. A massive might reverberated through the entire courtyard and many Jining Jinjuan present did not dare to speak. Who would have thought that the 1,000-crane tea party would develop to such a state and even escalate to a confrontation between Dharma characteristic experts? Right now, both sides were ready to fight at any moment. Girl, what are you trying to do? Elder Gu blew his beard and glared. His anger surged as he shouted, You still want to attack us? How dare you? Shangguan Zi, why aren't you coming out? Elder Gu's eyes lit up as he slammed his walking stick heavily on the ground. Rumble. Boom. Boom. Suddenly, endless beams of light burst forth from every corner of the Chigurumon and surged into the skies. The terrain of the sect was changing. The light of formation patterns? Su Zimo murmured softly. That was a sign that the formation was activated. Arakatsuki Michinoku's expression changed starkly as he exclaimed, The sect protection formation. The sect protection formation of the Chigurumon would definitely not be activated unless it was absolutely necessary. She had not expected that this inconspicuous old man before her would activate the Chigurumon's sect protection formation remotely. I was the one who personally set up the Chigurumon's sect protection formation. How dare you try to attack me today, girl? Elder Gu hollered with a booming voice. Dozens of Chigurumon Dharma Daojun stood in midair and exchanged glances with hesitant expressions. From the looks of it, this old man had a huge background and they did not dare to attack rashly. Even those in seclusion would be alarmed when the sect protection formation was activated. Boom! Right then, a loud bang sounded from the depths of the Chigurumon. A powerful aura burst forth. Against the envelopment of that aura, all the Dharma Daojun present were as insignificant as ants. Conjoint body mighty figure. Only someone at the conjoint body realm could release such a terrifying aura. Who's calling me? In the blink of an eye, a figure had already arrived above the mystic courtyard, as though it was one with the entire world. Nobody noticed how this person arrived. It was as though she had appeared out of thin air. It was a woman who looked even younger than Arakatsuki Michinoku. Her black hair fluttered and she was extremely beautiful. Her skin was fair and her eyes exuded a might that looked down on all living beings. Master. When Arakatsuki Michinoku saw this person, his expression changed and he bowed hurriedly. Lowering his head, his eyes were filled with endless fear. Hee hee, Shangguan, you're still so young, Elder Gu laughed strangely. Shangguanzi shifted her gaze and chuckled when she caught sight of Elder Gu. After taking that step, my lifespan increased exponentially and I naturally look younger. At that point, the crowd no longer had any doubts. The person who arrived was a conjoint body mighty figure. Shangguanzi landed in the courtyard and looked at the two old men, scolding jokingly, "Are you two old fogies tired of living? Why are you causing such a huge commotion at my place?" Although Shangguanzi was scolding, there was a hint of joy in her eyes from reuniting with old friends. "If you guys want to see me, just get Lan Yu to inform me. Why did you activate the sect protection formation?" Shangguanzi shook her head with a helpless expression. Chapter 969. When he heard that, Arakatsuki Michinoku panicked. "Hee, should we inform Lanyue?" Elder Gu sneered. "We'll thank the heavens if she doesn't take our heads." "Shangguan, your choice of patriarch isn't that great." Elder Gu pursed his lips. Shangguanzi's expression changed slightly as she narrowed her eyes and surveyed her surroundings. Gradually, she discovered something amiss. When she saw the dozens of Dharma Daojun around her, her first reaction was that these cultivators of the sect had also rushed over because of the sect protection formation. However, from the looks of it, there seemed to be more to it. Arakatsuki Michinoku's thoughts raced as he forced a smile. "Master, I don't know the identities of these two seniors." Shut up," Shangguanzi interrupted Arakatsuki Michinoku and turned to look at the two Dharma Daojun behind Arakatsuki Michinoku. She said indifferently, "The two of you, tell me everything that happened just now." The two Dharma Daojun looked hesitant and exchanged glances, seemingly troubled. Shangguanzi said slowly, "If you hide anything, you'll be punished according to the sect rules." Both of their hearts skipped a beat and they did not dare to hesitate any longer. They recounted everything that happened at the Thousand Crane Tea Party without missing out on any details. Initially, Shangguanzi even acknowledged it twice. Towards the end, she was already silent and expressionless. However, her gaze turned colder. Standing beside her, Arakatsuki Michinoku felt his heart skip a beat. This was the first time Dao Lord Scarlet Star, Elder Gu and Elder Gu heard about everything that happened at the tea party and were excited. The two old men looked at Su Zimo and nodded from time to time without concealing the admiration in their eyes. Su Zimo lamented internally, judging from the backgrounds of those two old men, they're probably experts from thousands of years ago. Given Dao Lord Scarlet Star's qualifications, I'm afraid he won't be able to invite them. Could it be, not long after, the two Dharma Daojun recounted the many conflicts that had occurred at the tea party. After hearing this, Shangguanzi remained silent for a long time. The atmosphere in the arena was extremely oppressive. It was like the calm before the storm. "Lan Yu," after a while, Shangguanzi sighed faintly and said word by word in a cold voice, "How dare you?" Arakatsuki Michinoku's mind trembled. With a plop, he knelt on the ground with a terrified expression. He quickly said, "Master, please listen to my explanation." Shangguanzi said, "The purpose of the Thousand Crane Tea Party is to invite the nascent Soul Realm paragons of Tianhuang mainland and establish good karma with many sections. The only thing Chiguramon needs to do is to be fair. Ask yourself honestly, is there any fairness in what you've done?" Arakatsuki Michinoku trembled and was rendered speechless. Shangguanzi continued, "You sacrificed your disciple to marry a cultivator of Chaos Essence sect to obtain their support. To think that you can do something like that? You've truly given Chiguramon face." Also, Shangguanzi pointed at Su Zimo and shouted, "I don't care if this child is a cultivator or a fiend demon. Chiguramon is indebted to him, so Chiguramon can't lay a hand on him. But what are you doing?" I only wanted him to stay in the sect as a guest." Arakatsuki Michinoku's voice trembled with fear. "Piak." Shangguanzi waved her hand and slapped Arakatsuki Michinoku heavily on the cheek, interrupting her. No matter what, Arakatsuki Michinoku's reputation in the cultivation world would be tarnished if she was taught a lesson in front of everyone. None of the cultivators present sympathized with her. The cultivators of Chaos Essence sect and Sword sect blamed her for not suppressing Su Zimo in time. Little Fatty, Jicheng Tian and the others who were on Su Zimo's side would not pity her. Lung Ro was the only one who could not bear it. She took half a step forward and raised her hand slightly, wanting to say something but hesitated. Shengguanzi shook her head. How dare you play tricks in front of me? Seems like I was wrong about you back then. Shengguan calmed down. Elder Gu said, we're actually here because we have good news for you. Dao Lord Scarlet Star hurried forward and handed over a letter, saying softly, this is personally written by a senior of 100 Refinement sect. As expected, Su Zimo lamented internally. As expected, this letter should have been written by Hakaridojin. The two old men before him should have been invited by Hakaridojin as well. To Shengguanzi. Shengguanzi received it casually and her gaze froze when she saw the line of words on it. This handwriting, Shengguanzi's palm trembled slightly as though she had thought of something and her mind was in turmoil. She hurriedly opened the letter and focused her gaze. The first line of words on the letter read, Shengguan, I'm still alive and have returned. When she saw that, Shengguanzi's eyes welled up and her vision blurred. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators present, she would have lost control of her emotions and burst into tears. Many cultivators naturally noticed Shengguanzi's emotional turmoil. The crowd could not imagine what was written in the letter that could cause a conjoint body mighty figure to lose control of her emotions. Is this for real? Shengguanzi turned to look at Elder Gu and Elder Gu, still not daring to be sure. The two old men nodded. Shengguanzi took a deep breath and calmed her mind. After reading the entire letter, she carefully put it away, as if this letter was something extremely precious. Shengguanzi turned to look at Su Zimo with a gentle gaze. She did not put on any airs or pressure of a conjoint body mighty figure and asked gently, You're Su Zimo? I'm Su Zimo. Greetings, senior. Su Zimo hurried forward and bowed. Your master and I are, yes, good friends. You don't have to be so polite. Shengguanzi smiled gently and waved her sleeves gently, helping Su Zimo up. Shengguanzi said, I heard about what happened in Myriad Phenomenon City from your master. Thank you for helping to save countless paragons and protect the final dignity of the human race. The cultivators were moved. This was a conjoint body mighty figure. They could not even be seen normally. But now, this conjoint body mighty figure was thanking a Jining Jinjuan. It was clear that the battle 100 years ago was absolutely true. Up till now, no one has dared to question your title as the #1 perfected lord. Shengguanzi said, You're the only one qualified to drink this supreme-grade mystic tea. With that said, Shengguanzi waved her hand gently and the only remaining tender leaf at the top of the mystic tea tree landed in the teacup. Thereafter, she poured in boiling spirit spring water and a steaming cup of fragrant tea was brewed. Lan Yue, serve the tea. Shengguanzi placed the teacup in Arikatsuki Michinoku's palm and said indifferently. Arikatsuki Michinoku's expression was extremely terrible. As a Chiguramon patriarch, she had to serve tea to a Jining Jinjuan. This was going to be a humiliation that she would never be able to erase for the rest of her life. The crowd was envious. Who could enjoy the treatment of a conjoint body mighty figure brewing tea and being served tea by a sect master? Arikatsuki Michinoku did not dare to disobey and received the teacup respectfully with both hands. She walked to Su Zimo expressionlessly and grit her teeth. Please. Thank you, patriarch. Su Zimo smiled gently and received the teacup, downing it in a single gulp. The moment Su Zimo raised his head to drink the tea, a vicious glint flashed through the depths of Arikatsuki Michinoku's eyes before disappearing quickly. Chapter 970. There was no bitterness when the supreme-grade mystic tea entered his stomach. Instead, it carried a faint sweetness and turned into a warm current that flowed through his limbs and bones, fusing into his body. Finally, the tea condensed into a ball of spirit chi that surged into his spirit platform and broke through his consciousness, wrapping around Su Zimo's two essence spirits. Su Zimo closed his eyes instinctively and sat on the ground. The ball of spirit chi nourished the two essence spirits, cleansing the impurities in the black-haired essence spirit and refining the yin chi in the scarlet-haired yin spirit. Under the nourishment of the ball of spirit chi, the two essence spirits became increasingly condensed and pure, advancing towards the void reversion realm. Before leaving Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had already cultivated his 2 essence spirits to the peak of late-stage nascent soul realm with the help of the 1000-year Blood Sea. Now that he had fought against many nascent soul paragons, he was on the verge of breaking through. With the help of the supreme-grade Mystic Tea, there were almost no obstacles and he broke through in less than half an incense's time. Everything happened naturally. Su Zimo's eyes opened and shone with a divine light. He reared his head and howled into the skies, his aura lasting for a long time. Perfected nascent soul. In 100 years, he had already cultivated from the Jin Dan realm to perfected nascent soul realm. That speed was terrifying. Throughout history, there were not many cultivators who could achieve such a cultivation speed. Jinying Jinjuan was more than 140 years old. Although he did not look young, Su Zimo was equivalent to a teenager if he was converted to a mortal's lifespan of 100 years. The eyes of many cultivators were filled with shock. None of them knew that Su Zimo was cultivating 2 essence spirits at the same time and was even using his essence spirit to nurture the creation Qinglian. Otherwise, he might have already entered the void reversion realm by now. After cultivating his essence spirit to perfected nascent soul, Su Zimo could clearly sense that the dermic powers he could control had increased and become denser. Furthermore, he could already vaguely sense the barrier to the void reversion realm. The perfected nascent soul realm was only a step away from the void reversion realm. However, that step stumped countless cultivators. In fact, some cultivators were unable to break through that barrier and reach the void reversion realm in their entire lives. Breaking through to the next realm was the most difficult. It would be normal for him to cultivate for hundreds of years. For example, perfected Lord Panglon, who just now had perished in the hands of Su Zimo, had only taken half a step forward after cultivating for hundreds of years and had yet to truly break through to the void reversion realm. Congratulations. Sheng Guanzi smiled. Thank you, senior. Su Zimo quickly got up and bowed. Sheng Guanzi nodded and turned to look at Arakatsuki Michinoku. She said indifferently, Lan Yue, you can't absolve yourself from the blame for this 1000-crane tea party. Your sin is unforgivable. Arakatsuki Michinoku's heart sank. Sheng Guanzi's tone was extremely heavy. It could be seen that she was truly enraged. This matter was difficult to resolve. Master, this disciple knows his mistake. Arakatsuki Michinoku knelt on the ground hurriedly and admitted his mistake loudly with a terrified expression. Sheng Guanzi shook her head and said sternly, as the master of a sect, you're unjust and ungrateful. If I hadn't come out of seclusion in time this time round, I can't imagine how much trouble you would have caused and how much trouble you would have implicated the sect. Arakatsuki Michinoku sprawled on the ground and trembled slightly, not daring to speak. Lan Yue, from this day forth, you're no longer the patriarch of the Chiguraman. Sheng Guanzi said slowly. Yes, master. Arakatsuki Michinoku did not dare to question and said softly with his head lowered. Sheng Guanzi stood quietly for a moment and took a deep breath before saying in a deep voice, according to the rules of the sect, you've caused a huge disaster and your sins are unforgivable. You should be executed. Arakatsuki Michinoku was so frightened that he shuddered. Pausing for a moment, Sheng Guanzi said, however, on account that you've followed me for many years, I'll cripple your cultivation today and expel you from the sect. You can be immortal in peace. The cultivators were moved. In just a few words, this high and mighty sect master who just now was reduced to a mortal in the blink of an eye. Everyone knew that the punishment was not severe at all. If Sheng Guanzi had not come out of seclusion, Arakatsuki Michinoku would have attacked Dao Lord Scarlet Star and the other 2 today and detained Su Zimo. It was very likely that the Chiguraman would be doomed eternally. Master, I know my mistake. Arakatsuki Michinoku was truly frightened as he crawled to Sheng Guanzi's feet and cried. Grandmaster, please show mercy. When she saw Arakatsuki Michinoku in such a state, Leng Ro could not bear it and knelt down to plead as well. No matter what, Arakatsuki Michinoku was her master after all. Sheng Guanzi turned to Leng Ro and asked, You're still pleading for mercy for her despite how she treated you? Please show mercy, Grandmaster. Leng Ro pursed her lips and said, Shangguan was silent for a moment before nodding. All right, I'll give you another chance. However, you can't escape punishment for what happened today. Bring Lan Yue to the law enforcement hall and punish her with 9 punishments. Thank you, Master. Thank you for your mercy, Master. Arakatsuki Michinoku kowtowed hurriedly as though he had been pardoned. Although she would be punished, she would at least be able to preserve her cultivation and have a chance to make a comeback. The 2 Dharma Daojuns stood out and helped Arakatsuki Michinoku up, heading towards the depths of the Chigurumon. Shangguan turned to look at Lung Ro, and the coldness in her eyes dissipated significantly. Your name is Lung Ro, right? Come under my tutelage from now on. Lung Ro was stunned. Little Fatty beamed and nudged Lung Ro hurriedly, whispering, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and acknowledge me as your master." The crowd was envious. This was a massive opportunity. If a conjoint body mighty figure took in a disciple personally, not only would her strength increase, Lung Ro's status in the Chigurumon would also rise in the future. Lung Ro knelt down and kowtowed. "Greetings, Master." When he saw that, Su Zimo was happy for Lung Ro as well. Lung Ro had already done her best to plead for mercy for Arakatsuki Michinoku. Now that Senior Shangguan was willing to take her in as a disciple, it was naturally her opportunity and fortune. The tea party continued. Many cultivators fought for the ordinary mystic tea. However, compared to the shocking battle just now, the fight between the nascent soul paragons was much more ordinary. With a conjoint body mighty figure like Shangguan holding down the fort, the tea party went smoothly and ended by nightfall. Some cultivators bade farewell and left that night. Some cultivators rested in the Chigurumon for the night. Everyone knew that today's battle was merely the beginning. The true storm was yet to come. Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglan, and many void reversions of the immortal sex had died in the hands of Su Zimo. The immortal sex would definitely not let this matter rest. Furthermore, Su Zimo had returned domineeringly and killed Yi Tiancheng, declaring war on Diin. How would Diin react? If a few immortal sects attacked at the same time, would 100 Refinement sect be able to protect Su Zimo? Furthermore, at the end of the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, a letter attracted a conjoint body mighty figure of the Chigurumon and almost reversed the entire situation, even causing a patriarch to fall from his pedestal. Just who wrote this letter? Chapter 971. After the tea party ended, everyone dispersed. Dao Lord Scarlet Star said to Su Zimo, "Uncle Master, Grandmaster wants you to return as soon as possible." Yes, Su Zimo nodded. Hakura Dojin made such arrangements and instructions because he was worried about his safety after causing such a huge commotion here. Su Zimo said, "Let's head back tonight then." Little Fatty, Leng Ro and the others were naturally reluctant to part with Su Zimo after not seeing him for 100 years. After the tea party, they had nothing to do and followed Su Zimo to 100 Refinement sect. Apart from them, there were also Shangguan, Elder Gu and Old Man Gu. Shangguan summoned a white cloud casually and led everyone towards 100 Refinement sect at full speed. Dao Bing Yuding took almost half a day to bring everyone from 100 Refinement sect there. But now, a conjoint body mighty figure was leading many cultivators at full speed and arrived at 100 Refinement sect in less than 10 minutes. That speed was truly frightening. When the cultivators of 100 Refinement sect returned to the sect, they were all excited and wanted nothing more than to spread everything that happened at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party to the entire sect. Su Zimo brought Lung Ro and the others back to his cave abode. Since they had not seen each other for 100 years, they naturally had a lot to say. It was probably even more so for Shangguan, Elder Gu and the other two since they had not seen Hakka Dojin for 5,000 years. After Shangguan and the others arrived at 100 Refinement sect, they headed straight for the 100 Refinement Great Hall with excited expressions. Su Zimo, Lung Ro, Little Fatty and the others chatted the entire night and recounted what happened to them in the past 100 years. The laughter in the cave abode never stopped. Little Fatty jumped up and down excitedly the entire night. Everyone felt as though they had returned to the time when they were at Misty Peak. Morning. Su Zimo and the others did not sleep the entire night, but they were still energetic and in high spirits. Not long after, Tao Lord Scarlet Star came to visit and asked Su Zimo to head to the 100 Refinements Great Hall because Hakura Dojin wanted to see him. Su Zimo did not hesitate and followed Tao Lord Scarlet Star to the main hall. Tao Lord Scarlet Star stood guard outside and only Su Zimo walked in alone. In the depths of the hall, it was stuffy and hot. After passing through a long corridor, they arrived at the innermost part of the room. Everything before them suddenly opened up. This was a domed secret room with a very large area. In the secret chamber, a ball of scorching flame was constantly spewing out from the ground to the left. On the right, there was a huge spiritual pond. Countless spiritual materials and plants rose and fell within it. Celestial spirit flower, azure sun branch, dragon phoenix lotus, shenyuan grass, 10,000-year blood ginseng. It was full of vitality and spiritual energy. Dense mist rose and exuded a dense and majestic vitality. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. Normally, it was rare to see even a single stalk of those spirit herbs and divine herbs. Only a sect with 100 refinement sects foundation and strength could gather so many. Hakura Dojin's essence spirit stood in midair not far away. I've heard about what happened at the tea party. As for what happens next, I'll handle it. You don't have to worry. Hakura Dojin consoled Su Zimo. The reason why I called you here today is to let you watch the entire process of bone forging body forging. Hakura Dojin continued, back then, I only explained it to you. I'm sure there are many things that you might not understand. Today, I'll demonstrate it once. You have to remember every single detail. Su Zimo nodded. Actually, his current body could be said to be perfect and was unprecedented. He cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and fused with the bloodline of dragons. His blood chi was terrifying. Even the physique and bloodline of the primordial 9 races could not compare to him. In Su Zimo's opinion, he would not change his body at all. In fact, there was no need for him to watch the bone forging body. However, he had a feeling that Hakura Dojin seemed to be implying something and focused his attention. This flame is the earth core fire. It's extremely hot and can melt many universal treasures. Hakura Dojin explained to Su Zimo as he demonstrated. Let's first melt and fuse the 9 fire elemental universal treasures together. Hakura Dojin placed the weapon tripod above the earth core fire and placed the top-tier universal treasures such as the Scarlet Phoenix Blood Gold, Sunstone, Lava Crystal, Thousand Demon Bloodstone, Nirvana Stone and others into the weapon tripod to melt them slowly. Thereafter, he used the solution within to forge the bones required for his body. It was a rather complicated and long process. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was extremely patient as he explained and hammered at the same time, explaining every single detail. Su Zimo memorized everything. It took a total of 3 days for a skeleton to be completed. Every section of the skeleton had natural fire elemental patterns on them. They were completely natural and emitted a scorching heat. This skeleton could be said to be perfect. Every part of it was exquisitely carved jade bracelets. It was a work of uncanny craftsmanship that made people sigh in admiration. With the help of this skeleton, the power of his fire spells would definitely increase. After completing bone forging, Hakura Dojin had consumed a great deal of energy. As he rested, he continued to explain to Su Zimo. Next is the body forging process. Hakura Dojin pointed at the spiritual pool not far away and said, this spiritual pool contains all the spiritual herbs and divine medicines that can provide life essence. Nourish your bloodline with this skeleton, and nurture your internal organs in this spiritual pool. Nurture the other organs in your body. This process is quite long, even longer than the time needed to forge bones. Hakura Dojin took a deep breath and pointed to a brand new storage bag at the side. Keep this storage bag. Su Zimo picked up the storage bag and took a look. He could not help but be shocked. The storage bag contained a large number of spirit herbs and divine medicines that were exactly the same as the ones in the spiritual pool. Not only that, there were even some top-grade bone forging materials and ores in the storage bag. Su Zimo looked at Hakura Dojin. This gift was way too precious. Even if he sold all the treasures in Misty Peak, they would not be as valuable as this small storage bag. When 100 Refinement Sect was collecting natural treasures, spirit herbs and divine medicines, I specially instructed them to collect 2 sets. Hakaidojin said meaningfully, accept it. You might need it in the future. Su Zimo nodded and accepted the storage bag. Alright, now that bone forging is over, it's body tempering. Hakaidojin's essence spirit flashed and arrived at the glabella of the skeleton. He controlled the skeleton to enter the spiritual pool and assume a lotus position. Swoosh! An endless stream of life essence surged into the scarlet skeleton. At the same time, Hakaidojin used his essence spirit to control dermic powers and vibrate the skeleton continuously. The sound of bone marrow flowing could be heard from within the skeleton. Marrow cleansing and blood swapping. Su Zimo was extremely familiar with this scene. There was a marrow cleansing section in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. He used the sound of tigers and leopards to cleanse the marrow to create a new bloodline and ultimately achieve the goal of blood swapping. Gradually, pink flesh appeared on the scarlet skeleton. It was as thin as a cicada's wings and was almost transparent. As time passed by, the flesh on the skeleton gradually filled up. Hakaidojin's silhouette gradually became clearer as well. In the secret chamber, there was silence. At that moment, the cultivation world of the Middle Continent was in an uproar as news after news spread one after another, causing a huge uproar. Chapter 972. The number 1 of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago, Su Zimo, has returned in a domineering manner. At the Thousand Crane Tea Party, Su Zimo killed Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Panglan and defeated many nascent soul paragons. Even void reversions were no match for him, and he was conferred as the number 1 perfected lord. After not seeing him for 100 years, this monster incarnate is even more terrifying than before. He even declared war on Di'in at the tea party. Only one of the Chaos Essence twin paragons is left. The news spread rapidly in the cultivation world of the Middle Continent and caused a huge commotion. At that moment, almost all the cultivators and major sects and factions in the Middle Continent were discussing this matter. This person has been in seclusion for 100 years. Now that he has returned, his personality hasn't changed at all. The moment he appeared, he offended so many factions. I don't think he'll live for long. Not necessarily. I heard that 100 Refinement Sect has made it clear that they want to protect this person. Fufu, 100 Refinement Sect is declining day by day and can't even protect themselves. Who else can they protect? That's right. If a few super sects exert pressure at the same time, 100 Refinement Sect will have to submit as well. Otherwise, their 100 Refinement Sect might suffer a calamity. Not necessarily. I've heard some news. I heard that a Dharma characteristic expert of 100 Refinement Sect who has been missing for thousands of years has returned and is reconstructing his body. What's the use of a Dharma characteristic expert for a matter that concerns the survival of a sect? Someone scoffed in disdain. That Dharma characteristic expert is extraordinary. I heard that he's Hakaidojin from 5,000 years ago. Who's Hakaidojin? I've never heard of him. It's him. The number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. He's still alive. News of what happened at the Thousand Crane Tea Party spread, and it was not difficult to deduce the truth if some of the details were remembered. After all, there were very few people who could invite the 2 elders of Ancient Array Sect and Elixir Yang Sect who had been in seclusion for thousands of years, as well as a conjoint body mighty figure of Chigurmon with a single letter. At the same time, Sword Sect. Immortal Sword Dao residents. After Dao Lord Cloud Rain and Fairy Snowdrift's clones were destroyed in Thousand Demon Valley, they stayed here for more than 3 months and verified their Dao techniques with Dao Lord Immortal Sword. Initially, the 2 of them was prepared to leave. However, news after news reached the Sword Sect, and their journey was temporarily put on hold. Dao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly with a cold expression, "If Hakaidojin isn't dead, he should be the one who fought against me in Thousand Demon Valley." No wonder. Dao Lord Cloud Rain said, "Back when your essence spirits were fighting, that person released the essence spirit's secret skill of the soaring serpent flame god. Something's not right." Fairy Snowflake shook her head and said, I heard that Hakodojin is rebuilding his body. The person we saw that day still had his flesh and blood. It couldn't be him. It doesn't make sense here. That would explain it if there was another person present. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's eyes flickered as he said faintly. What do you mean? Fairy Snowflake and Immortal Sword looked at Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Su Zimo. Tao Lord Immortal Sword spat out a name from between his teeth. Lady Snowflake and Lady Snowflake frowned slightly. The number 1 perfected lord who is the most famous during this period of time? Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned. There's indeed a coincidence between that lad's return and extreme fires. However, what has he got to do with this matter? Tao Lord Immortal Sword narrowed his eyes and said sternly, previously, according to the news from the disciples of Sword Sect, that monster incarnate Su Zimo returned and cultivated an extremely terrifying sword art. Even top paragons of Sword Sect like Jian Wuzong and Hang Chuyu were nearly killed by that sword art. When Tao Lord Immortal Sword saw that the two of them were still confused, he pondered for a moment before saying in a deep voice, now that things have come to this, there are some things that I won't hide anymore. Back then, the treasure that I asked the two of you to help me fight for in Thousand Demon Valley was actually a sword art. It's one of the 3 ancient sword arts. Fairy Snowflake and Tao Lord Cloud Rain's expressions changed slightly as they exclaimed. The 3 ancient sword arts were way too famous. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said hatefully, as I expected, that sword art should have landed in the hands of Su Zimo. I've got it. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was enlightened. You're saying that the one who fought against us in Thousand Demon Valley back then was actually Su Zimo's body and Hakodojin's essence spirit? That's right, Tao Lord Immortal Sword nodded. My demon sealing diagram was not suppressed by that person's dermic powers. Instead, it was stunned by the aura of Su Zimo's divine phoenix bone. That's why I was able to obtain it so easily. That junior sure is gutsy. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression was cold, and he did not conceal the killing intent in his eyes. His clone was destroyed and he returned empty-handed. He even lost quite a number of treasures to invite Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Fairy Snowflake. All the resentment that he had accumulated over the past few days was vented on Su Zimo. But are you prepared to settle scores with that lad? Tao Lord Cloud Rain raised his brow and asked with a fake smile. Tao Lord Immortal Sword harumphed and said coldly, I've already said that if I find out that person's identity, I'll kill him even if he's Acheron. You've got to move quickly then. Tao Lord Cloud Rain smiled gently. After the 1,000 Crane Tea Party this time round, that lad has caused a huge disaster. Yi Tiancheng, Perfected Lord Panglon and many other void reversions are dead. Those immortal sects will definitely make a move. Hakodojin? 100 Refinement Sect? Tao Lord Immortal Sword sneered, I'll pay a visit personally and see what 100 Refinement Sect's attitude is. I don't believe that 100 Refinement Sect can withstand the pressure of so many super sects. Brother Cloud Rain, why don't you travel with me? Tao Lord Immortal Sword turned and asked with a sincere expression. Tao Lord Cloud Rain knew that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was only inviting him to make use of his influence. However, he did not reject it. He was not interested in Su Zimo. However, after 5,000 years, he wanted to see how Hakodojin, the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking who suppressed him back then, was doing now. Snowflake, if you have nothing on, why don't you come with us? Tao Lord Immortal Sword invited Fairy Snowflake again. Sure, Fairy Snowflake nodded and said indifferently, however, I'm not going this time round to help you. I'm just curious about Su Zimo and Hakodojin. There's no time to lose. Let's move out now. Tao Lord Immortal Sword soared into the air and headed out of the cave abode. The moment he arrived outside the cave abode, a sword beam sped over from afar and descended before Tao Lord Immortal Sword. It was a woman with a fluttering white dress and a sword on her back. She was extremely beautiful and had a heroic aura. It was the Dharma characteristic expert of Sword Sect, Qin Pianran. Senior brother, Tao being Han Jian of our sect died at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Master wants me to head to 100 Refinement Sect and demand the true culprit. As Qin Pianran spoke, She looked at Fairy Snowflake with some hostility in her eyes. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said indifferently, "We're about to go together. You should come as well." The four of them were speechless. They summoned their dermic weapons and sped into the distance, disappearing from the skies above Sword Sect before long. At the same time, Dharma Daojun of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Chaos Essence Sect, and Zephyr Thunder Palace appeared and rushed towards 100 Refinement Sect with a murderous aura. The other sects and factions were moving as well. A storm was brewing in the Middle Continent. Chapter 973. 100 Refinement Sect. Hakar Dojin's bone-tempering body was already nearing the end and there was no longer any danger. The only thing he had to do was wait. Su Zimo retreated silently. Outside the hall, not only were Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the other 100 Refinement Sect cultivators guarding, Elder Gu had even set up an array formation personally to prevent any unforeseen events. Su Zimo looked over although he could not see anything. However, he could vaguely sense that there were other experts in the corners of the hall. In fact, there might even be conjoint body mighty figures guarding in secret. Everyone was waiting for Hakahidojin's rebirth. Actually, Su Zimo was already prepared to leave after killing a few people at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. He did not want to implicate 100 Refinement Sect. It was the same as before when he did not return to Misty Peak because he did not want to implicate Misty Peak. However, Hakadojin still kept him. Patriarch, Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain is here to visit. Before long, 100 Refinement Sect cultivators sent a message. Let him rest in the front hall. Tao Lord White Flames was already prepared and instructed. Tyrant Emperor Mountain was one of the 108 upper sects and its status in the cultivation world was even lower than the 4 unorthodox groups. As the Patriarch of 100 Refinement Sect, he naturally would not receive them personally. Fufu, seems like some upper sects can't sit still and want to take advantage of the situation. Tao Lord Scarlet Star sneered. A moment later, another 100 Refinement Sect cultivator sped over and said in a deep voice, "Patriarch, Tao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements Sect is here to visit." "Yes, arrange for them to be in the front hall." Tao Lord White Flames nodded. Before long, another 100 Refinement Sect cultivator sent a message. "Patriarch, Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace is here to visit." Tao Lord White Flames, Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the others were shocked. It was finally here. Dharma Daojun of the 9 Immortal Sects had appeared with ill intentions. "Patriarch, Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect is here to visit." "Patriarch, Tao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect is here." "Monk Kong One of the Formless Temple is here to visit." "Monk Liao Ming of Sanskrit Temple pays a visit." As the master of a sect, Tao Lord White Flames was able to maintain his composure when he heard about the arrival of super sects one after another. "Patriarch, Tao Lord Immortal Sword, Fairy Snowdrift, and Tao Lord Cloud Rain have come together." Another piece of news came. Finally, the look on Tao Lord White Flame's face changed. Although the Dharma Daojun from before were also very famous, compared to these three, they were far inferior. Tao Lord Cloud Rain, second on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. Fairy Snowflake, number 1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking 2,000 years ago. Tao Lord Immortal Sword, number 1 of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. Furthermore, the three of them were titular disciples of Cloud Rain Sect, Snowdrift Valley and Sword Sect respectively. It's easy to explain why Tao Lord Immortal Sword is here. But why are Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain here? Tao Lord Scarlet Star frowned. Tao Lord White Flames turned to everyone and cupped his fists. "I've got to go deal with it. Everyone please wait here. Don't show yourself first. Wait for news from Granduncle Master Extreme Fire." Before Tao Lord White Flames left, he reminded Su Zimo. "I'll go with you too." With that, Tao Lord Scarlet Star sped away with Tao Lord White Flames. Front hall. The hall was extremely spacious and was made purely of metal. It had a metallic texture and looked indestructible and unshakable. There were already many cultivators seated in the hall. Every single one of them had powerful auras and a wanton might. The disciples of 100 Refinement Sect who came to serve tea were all terrified, afraid of offending these important figures. Nangong Ling, Yu Hanyun and Ru Xian were in the hall. The Dharma Dao Jun who came had already taken their seats. Dao Lord Immortal Sword, Fairy Snowdrift and Dao Lord Cloud Rain sat at the highest positions. Although Cloud Rain Sect was a fiend sect, none of the Dharma Dao Jun present dared to provoke Dao Lord Cloud Rain. In the cultivation world, strength reigned supreme. Since many Dharma Dao Jun were gathered here, there was naturally no lack of pleasantries. Of course, everyone knew why they were here. After exchanging pleasantries, they fell silent. All of them had dark and angry expressions. The atmosphere in the hall was a little tense. Piak! Suddenly, Dao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain slammed his heavy palm on the metal table with a loud bang. Ru Xian, who had just served tea, was shocked and failed to hold the teacup. With a crack, it fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. What are you guys doing, 100 Refinement Sect? Dao Lord Red Tiger was born with a stocky build and tempered his body year-round. He looked extremely tall and muscular with eyes that resembled a pair of copper bells. He glared at Ru Xian beside him and roared with a ferocious aura. There are so many Dharma Dao Jun here to visit and 100 Refinement Sect only sent a few brats to deal with us? Is this how 100 Refinement Sect treats its guests? Dao Lord Red Tiger's voice was like a bell, causing Ru Xian's ears to buzz and she was already feeling dizzy. Nangong Ling and Yu Hanyun endured their discomfort and hurried forward to pull Ru Xian back. Don't you find it embarrassing to bully juniors? A cold laugh sounded from outside as Dao Lord Scarlet Star walked in. When he saw that his disciple was bullied by the Dharma Dao Jun, he was naturally enraged and his tone was merciless. Hee, if that wasn't the case, who knows how long you guys from 100 Refinement Sect would have to hide? Dao Lord Red Tiger chuckled. Dao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements Sect said in an eccentric manner as well, that's right. If 100 Refinement Sect hides, there's nothing we can do. Heaven Sea, Red Tiger, this is 100 Refinement Sect. Watch your words. Dao Lord White Flame said coldly. How impressive. Dao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace said slowly with a cold glint in his eyes, no wonder 100 Refinement Sect dares to risk universal condemnation and take in a fiend demon. I wonder what you're talking about, fellow Taoist Fire Cloud. Dao Lord White Flame said indifferently. Stop pretending. Dao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect stood up slowly. White Flames, hand over Su Zimo and 100 Refinement Sect might be able to retain its position as one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Otherwise, 100 Refinement Sect will be destroyed. Amitba, Monk Kongwon of Formless Monastery pressed his palms together and lowered his gaze, saying softly, Patron White Flames, we Buddhists have never been willing to fight with others. However, Su Zimo is definitely not a good person. He massacred the paragons of the human race wantonly and even took the utmost treasure of the Buddhist monasteries, Creation Qinglian, for his own. He deserves to die. Dao Lord White Flames sneered, Monk Kongwen, aren't you being unreasonable? In Myriad Phenomenon City, Su Zimo obtained the recognition of the human emperor and fairy Ling Long. He resolved the catastrophe of the paragons single-handedly and is definitely a human. Furthermore, Creation Qinglian is a treasure given to him by Enigma Palace. What has it got to do with the Buddhist monasteries? White Flames. Right then, Dao Lord Immortal Sword suddenly spoke. Instantly, the hall fell silent. No one dared to underestimate this Dao Lord who was the number 1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking. Hand him over. 100 Refinement Sect won't be able to protect him. Dao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, in other words, I'm going to barge into 100 Refinement Sect right now to take him away. Who dares to stop me? Who can stop me? Although his words were extremely domineering, no one dared to question them. Given Dao Lord Immortal Sword's combat strength, he could most likely fight against conjoint body mighty figures. If Dao Lord Cloud Rain and Fairy Snowdrift were to join forces with him, his combat strength would be terrifying, and even if 100 Refinement Sect could withstand it, they would be severely injured. Furthermore, Tao Lord Immortal Sword was the titular disciple of Sword Sect and the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking, 100 Refinement Sect would not dare to kill him. If you dare barge into 100 Refinement Sect, I'll kill you. At this moment, a cold voice came from outside the door. It was loud and clear. Chapter 974. There were not many cultivators in the cultivation world who dared to speak to Tao Lord Immortal Sword in that tone. The number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking, titular disciple. That title meant that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was an existence that could sweep through those of the same cultivation realm and fight against ordinary conjoint body mighty figures. Above conjoint body mighty figures were Mahayana patriarchs. Mahayana realm experts would almost never show themselves in Tianhuang mainland unless something major happened. Therefore, even if it was conjoint body mighty figures, not many people would dare to claim that they could kill Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Furthermore, he was backed by Sword Sect. Throughout history, some immortal sects were destroyed, some rose and some declined. However, Sword Sect stood tall and was ranked in the top 3 of the immortal sects. In other words, who would dare to kill him? Tao Lord Immortal Sword's gaze turned cold. Everyone turned to look. Outside the hall, 2 people strode in. The leader was a slender, fiery red Taoist robe that seemed to be burning with flames. His black hair draped over his shoulders and he had 3 strands of beard. His face was rosy and his eyes were bright as he emitted a violent and scorching aura. After that person entered the hall, the temperature of the entire hall rose rapidly. There were more than 10 Dharma Daojuns seated in the hall with mixed auras and unbridled might. However, after this person entered, the mixed auras and the might of many Tao Lords seemed to be burned into nothingness instantly. The aura that this person exuded was even more domineering than his words. Extreme fire, you're indeed still alive. Tao Lord Cloud Rain looked at the person and said slowly with bright eyes. The person smiled indifferently and surveyed his surroundings, saying slowly, I'm Extreme Fire. Everyone, it must have been a long journey. Hakuridojin. All the cultivators present were shocked when they heard that name. Gazes landed on Hakuridojin one after another, sizing up this expert from 5,000 years ago. Tao Lord Immortal Sword looked at Hakuridojin expressionlessly and sword lights seemed to flash in his eyes before disappearing quickly. Grandmaster. Tao Lord Scarlet Star was delighted and excited when he saw Hakuridojin return unscathed after reconstructing his body. The Hakuridojin in front of him was exactly the same as the Grandmaster in his memory. 5,000 years had passed, but time seemed to have left no trace on Hakuridojin's body. Moreover, Hakuridojin looked even scarier than he was 5,000 years ago. Everyone's gaze turned to the cultivator behind Hakuridojin. It was a Jining Jinjuan. He wore a green robe and had a delicate appearance. His eyes were clear, and he had one hand behind his back. He looked like a weak scholar. For some inexplicable reason, this scholar gave off a strange feeling to everyone present. Everyone took a few more glances at him before looking back at Hakuridojin. Hakuridojin led the delicate scholar behind him through the hall and walked towards the main seat. He said in a seemingly casual manner, Everyone, you've come at the right time. Let me introduce you to my disciple, Su Zimo. Dharma Daojuan's expression changed. Su Zimo. From a certain perspective, this name was even more shocking to the many Tao Lords present. He was the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago. He defeated Di'in in Myriad Phenomenon City and massacred 2 foreign races. He was invincible among his peers. After 100 years of hibernation, he returned domineeringly and killed Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglon and many other paragons. Even void reversions were not his match, and he was conferred as the number 1 perfected lord at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. This person's rise was way too fast. Nobody knew what level this person would reach in another 100 years. If Hakuridojin had not said it personally, none of the cultivators present would have imagined that this delicate scholar before them was the infamous number 1 perfected lord. Was this scholar a demon? The gazes of the Tao Lords landed on Su Zimo once more as they scanned him. Everyone frowned slightly. They could not sense any aura of demons from Su Zimo. Or rather, even Dharma Daojun who was present could not see through Su Zimo. Of course, the reason why the Tao Lords were shocked was not because they were afraid of Su Zimo's strength. It was because in their eyes, Su Zimo was a massive treasure trove. In name, many immortal sects were here to seek revenge under the banner of slaying demons and fiends. However, in reality, the Tao Lords were more concerned about how to split the treasures on Su Zimo. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was concerned about the heaven-slaying sword art. The two monks of the Buddhist monasteries were concerned about Qinglian and lost secret skills such as the Daming True Sutra. Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace wanted to snatch Su Zimo's Purple Thunder Manual. There was also the legendary Divine Phoenix Bone. Your Su Zimo? Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain grinned and suddenly attacked without warning, roaring, "If you dare to cripple a paragon of Tyrant Emperor Mountain, I'll cripple you." Among the Dharma Daojun present, only Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Extreme Fire were experts of the same generation. The others did not have a strong impression of Hakuei Dojin and were not afraid of him either. Su Zimo had only disappeared for 100 years and countless paragons of the younger generation were already looking down on him and doubting him. Furthermore, Hakuei Dojin had been missing for 5,000 years. Of course, the Dharma Daojun present were all monsters that had cultivated for thousands of years. None of them were fools. Although Tao Lord Red Tiger seemed reckless and ignored Hakuei Dojin, in reality, his actions were also to test Hakuei Dojin's attitude. If Hakuei Dojin's attitude was firm and decisive, he would be able to test Hakuei Dojin's strength with a single clash. Swoosh! Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist carried a suffocating domineering power as dermic powers surged and arrived with a bang. Hakuei Dojin glanced sideways and two balls of flames seemed to blaze in his eyes. Hakuei Dojin paused in his tracks and flicked his sleeves, channeling boundless dermic powers towards Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist. Boom! When Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist collided with the seemingly soft Taoist robes, a deafening bang burst forth. Tao Lord Red Tiger's expression changed. That simple collision was enough to test that Hakuei Dojin's strength was far above his. Fu, Tao Lord, you truly live up to your reputation? Tao Lord Red Tiger let out a dry laugh and was about to leave. You still want to leave? Hakuei Dojin sneered. Suddenly, a gigantic palm reached out from beneath his wide sleeves and gripped Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist. Tao Lord Red Tiger's heart sank. He realized that he could no longer escape. Tyrant Emperor Mountain specialized in body tempering. However, when his fist was gripped by Hakuei Dojin's palm, he felt a bone-deep pain. It was as though his fist would be crushed by Hakuei Dojin the next moment. Instantly, a layer of sweat appeared on Tao Lord Red Tiger's forehead. Tao Lord, please have mercy. Just as Tao Lord Red Tiger was about to admit defeat, he saw another scene. His pupils constricted and he let out a tragic cry. A scarlet flame appeared in Hakuei Dojin's palm and burned his fist to ashes. The flame was incomparably terrifying and was spreading along his arm towards his body. Chapter 975. Tao Lord Red Tiger released his aura and channeled his dermic powers. However, he could not extinguish the flames on his arm no matter what. The crimson flame grew stronger and burned fiercely, as if it was going to engulf his entire body. Extreme fire, Tzu? Tao Lord Red Tiger widened his blood-red eyes in rage. He didn't expect that Hakuei Dojin would react so violently when he was just testing the waters. He had already lost one of his arms. He had yet to reach the conjoint body realm and could not regrow his limbs. A crippled arm had a huge impact on Tao Lord Red Tiger, who specialized in body tempering and melee combat. His combat strength was reduced by at least 30%. What was even more frightening was that the flame was still burning. Rumble! Tao Lord Red Tiger's body blurred. An illusory figure rushed out from behind him. Its body was huge, reaching 50 feet tall, and it instantly broke through the roof of the main hall. Its entire body exuded a domineering and powerful aura, and its every move could cause the heaven and earth to tremble. Cosmic form. The heaven and earth Dharma form was the Dharma Daojuan's most powerful technique. It was also because of this that this realm was called the Transcendence Realm. Generally speaking, cultivators would not use their heaven and earth dharma characteristics unless it was absolutely necessary. Be it nascent soul or void reversion realm cultivators, they would release dharmic arts using dharmic arts and essence spirits to channel the power of heaven and earth. Once a cultivator stepped into the dharma characteristic realm, their essence spirit would rise to a whole new level. They would be able to communicate with heaven and earth and merge their bodies with heaven and earth to achieve dharma resonance. They would then be able to form a heaven and earth dharma characteristic. Even after reaching the dharma characteristic realm, the bodies of most cultivators were still incomparable to that of demons. However, a heaven and earth dharma characteristic could fight against demons in close combat. In essence, the cosmic form was also a type of spell. However, the existence of a heaven and earth dharma characteristic allowed one to utilize the power of heaven and earth directly without the need for dharmic arts or dharmic arts. It was even more violent and direct. Of course, there were strong and weak heaven and earth dharma characteristics. The powerful heaven and earth dharma form could overturn rivers and seas with a single punch. A single stomp could cause mountains to crumble and the earth to crack. The larger the heaven and earth dharma characteristic, the more heaven and earth powers it could mobilize, and the more powerful it would be. Under normal circumstances, being able to condense a heaven and earth dharma characteristic that was 50 feet tall was already considered outstanding. If he could condense a dharma idol that was 6 feet tall, he would definitely be called a prodigy. The famous 10 feet 6 golden body of the Diamond Temple was a heaven and earth dharma form that was 60 feet tall. If he could form a cosmic form that was 7 feet tall, he would be a peerless genius that only appeared once in 1,000 years. Who knew how many opportunities and great fortunes were required to create such a person? Once an 80 feet tall heaven and earth dharma idol was condensed, one could be called a monster. Naturally, it would be easy for him to sweep through those of the same level. In history, the first place of the dharma characteristic ranking had almost always had a heaven and earth dharma characteristic that was 80 feet tall. Of course, according to the old legends, the highest level of cosmic form was 90 feet. 9 was the extreme number. To be able to cultivate a 90-foot tall dharma idol was something that only appeared once in 10,000 years. He could be called a peerless monster. Not only did it depend on the cultivator's bloodline, luck, talent, physique, or the cultivation of the sect, there were many other factors, including the environment of the entire cultivation world. In ancient times, in order to escape the fate of being enslaved, the human race rose against the trend. This was a glorious era that belonged to the human race. Under such circumstances, countless heaven's favorites emerged. Among them, there was no lack of existences who had cultivated to a height of 90 feet. Almost all of those existences who did not die in battle were conferred emperors. Without that environment, without the pressure of life and death and many powerful and terrifying enemies, it would be difficult for the human race to produce such peerless monster incarnates. Right now, it was already rather rare for Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain to be able to condense a heaven and earth dharma idol that was more than 50 feet tall. Its power was shocking as well. Its massive body smashed through the metal roof of the entire hall and countless fragments fell, causing the hall to be in chaos. In the hall, Nangong Ling and the other cultivators with lower cultivation retreated and hid at the side. Only the Tao Lords could maintain their composure. Everyone frowned slightly. To be able to force Tao Lord Red Tiger to this extent and even release his heaven and earth dharma idol, it was clear how terrifying that scarlet flame was. Extinguish! After releasing his heaven and earth dharma idol, the flames on Tao Lord Red Tiger's body were suppressed and flickered, showing signs of extinguishing. Humph! Hakar Dojin harumphed coldly and tapped with his fingertip, releasing a red light that entered the flames. Swoosh! The flames shone brightly and burned the skies. The flames were so intense that they engulfed Tao Lord Red Tiger's heaven and earth dharma idol and burned furiously. Scarlet flames burst forth from the billowing smoke. Roar! The heaven and earth dharma idol that was more than 50 feet tall struggled in the flames and waved its arms. However, it could not extinguish the flames on its body. Tao Lord Red Tiger could not escape either and was burned by the flames. his flesh and blood turned into ashes and his bones were burned red and almost transparent. Even his essence spirit could not escape from the raging flames. At that moment, his essence spirit was about to be burned into nothingness once it left his body. Extreme fire, you are ruthless. Tao Lord Red Tiger's hoarse voice sounded from the flames. According to his original plan, he would test the waters himself. Even if he was no match for the other party, he would just lower his head and admit defeat before retreating. However, he did not expect that Hakai Dojin would not give him the chance at all. Less than that, he did not expect Hakai Dojin to be so strong and possess such terrifying combat strength. Even his heaven and earth Dharma idol could not defend against the flames released by Hakai Dojin. All of the Tao Lords stared at the blazing light with various looks on their faces, but none of them said anything. For example, Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace, and the others did not have much of an impression of Hakai Dojin initially. However, after this exchange, everyone's impression of Hakai Dojin gradually became clearer. Domineering, and decisive. No matter what, Tao Lord Red Tiger was a Tao Lord of Tyrant Emperor Mountain after all, and was not a nobody. Now that he was killed by extreme fire, it proved one thing. Hakai Dojin wanted to protect Su Zimo. He did not hesitate to kill a Dharma Daojun and offend an upper sect like Tyrant Emperor Mountain. At the same time, not far from 100 Refinement Sect, cultivators with powerful auras stood in midair. They were all Dharma Daojun and were looking over. Among those cultivators, some were from one of the 108 upper sects, some were itinerant cultivators, and some were from immortal sects like Soaring Feather Sect. When the Dharma Daojun saw the heaven and earth Dharma idol that was burning with flames and roaring in pain in the direction of 100 Refinement Sect, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Seems like extreme fire has returned. From the looks of it, he's clearly not weaker than back then. Everyone, let's go. Since extreme fire has returned, all of us old friends have to congratulate him no matter what. The reason why the Dharma Daojun did not enter 100 Refinement Sect was because they were observing. If the rumors were true and Hakai Dojin did not die and returned domineeringly, they would pay him a congratulatory visit. 5,000 years ago, Hakai Dojin was way too famous. Coupled with his movement technique as a weapon refinement grandmaster, his influence was even greater than that of many conjoint body mighty figures. If extreme fire did not return or if his methods were not as strong as before, they would not appear lest they incur the wrath of Chaos Essence Sect and the other immortal sections. In the distant horizon, a black-robed cultivator flew over with a cold expression. He carried a blood-red saber on his shoulder and was filled with killing intent. The person looked in the direction of 100 Refinement Sect and murmured softly, "Thankfully, I'm not too late." Chapter 976. 100 Refinement Sect, in the front hall. In less than 3 breaths, the 50 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was burned into nothingness and its dharmic powers dissipated. Without the support of the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, Tao Lord Red Tiger could not defend against the burning of the scarlet flames and was engulfed by the flames in the blink of an eye. Tao Lord Red Tiger screamed repeatedly and his voice was inaudible towards the end. Right in front of everyone, a Dharma Daojun was burned to ashes just like that. Not even his bones were left. Some of the Dharma Daojun who were initially eager to give it a try fell silent as well. In the hall, the only ones who could maintain their composure were the Dharma Daojun of the super sects. In a sense, this was the first time Su Zimo saw Hakai Dojin attack. The previous 2 times, Hakai Dojin was only an essence spirit without a physical body and could not release such dharmic arts. Su Zimo realized that Hakai Dojin's strength seemed to be even more terrifying than he had imagined. The 50 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could not defend against Hakai Dojin's dharmic art. After killing a Dharma Daojun, Hakai Dojin led Su Zimo past many Tao Lords and sat down on the main seat, as though nothing had happened. Su Zimo followed behind him. Along the way, not a single Dharma Daojun dared to attack. Good. When Tao Lord Cloud Rain saw that, he clapped and cheered repeatedly, saying mockingly, as expected of extreme fire. You're still as impressive as back then. Hakara Dojin said indifferently, 5,000 years have passed and you're still the same. You haven't improved at all. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was not annoyed and said leisurely, extreme fire, 5,000 years have passed and you're still at the Dharma characteristic realm. You haven't improved either. Moreover, I heard that you even lost your physical body. Looks like you're not doing well. Hakara Dojin, although your physical body has recovered, how much of your combat strength can you recover? Back then, you were indeed a top-tier expert. Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace chuckled coldly. Normally speaking, after losing one's original physical body, regardless of whether it was possession or a new Dharma characteristic physical body, it would be very difficult to achieve 100% compatibility with one's primordial spirit. Thus, one's combat strength would definitely decrease. However, Hakara Dojin had personally forged his bones and cast his body in order to avoid such a situation. Moreover, his choices were all top-notch spiritual materials. Now, this body had already resonated with his essence soul and the compatibility was almost 100%. As long as he continued cultivating for a period of time, his essence spirit and body would fuse perfectly. Hakara Dojin's gaze shifted and landed on Tao Lord Fire Cloud. It was as though two flames were bursting forth as he said slowly, if you want to know, you can give it a try. Tao Lord Fire Cloud's heart skipped a beat. He felt his heart skip a beat when he was glared at by Hakara Dojin and retracted his actions of getting up. He did not want to become the second Tao Lord Red Tiger. Hakara Dojin looked at Fairy Snowdrift and raised his brow, asking, why? Snowdrift Valley wants to interfere as well? It's a misunderstanding. Fairy Snowdrift smiled indifferently. I'm only here because of your reputation. Firstly, I want to see the Hakara Dojin from 5,000 years ago. Secondly, I want to see the #1 perfected lord of the current era. Fairy Snowdrift's intention was to remain neutral. With that said, her beautiful eyes shimmered as she looked towards Su Zimo who was behind Hakara Dojin. Su Zimo had an indifferent expression and did not bat an eyelid. Even though there were many Dharma Daojun present and their auras were terrifying, he was still able to remain calm. You live up to your reputation, Fairy Snowdrift smiled gently. No one knew if she was referring to Hakara Dojin or Su Zimo. Unknowingly, Hakara Dojin had already gained control of the entire situation. At that moment, Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the other two were the only ones in the hall who could ensure that their auras did not dissipate against Hakara Dojin's powerful aura. There was a hidden sharpness to Tao Lord Immortal Sword's body the entire time. Tao Lord Cloud Rain waved his folding fan gently and mist filled the air. Fairy Snowdrift's surroundings were cold as ice. For example, Tao Lord Fire Cloud and the others of Zephyr Thunder Palace were suppressed. Clang, clang, clang. Tao Lord Immortal Sword tapped his fingers on the metal table slowly and let out the sound of metal clashing in a rhythmic manner. With each tap, the sharpness on his body would increase by a notch. After a few taps, the sharpness on Tao Lord Immortal Sword's body had already surged into the skies, slicing Hakara Dojin's aura into two. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, extreme fire, it's important to know one's limits. If you want to protect this lad, don't drag the entire 100 Refinement sect down with you. But you want to make a move in 100 Refinement sect as well? Hakara Dojin's gaze narrowed with killing intent. It's not just me. Tao Lord Immortal Sword stood up slowly like an unsheathed sword with a sharp edge as he said coldly, it's Dharma Daojun of our immortal sects who is here to ask for him. Are you going to hand him over or not? Patron Extreme Fire, because of a fiend demon, 100 Refinement sect, Sword sect, Chaos Essence sect, Heavenly Dipper sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace and our two monasteries are on bad terms. You have to consider carefully, Monk Kong one of Formless Monastery persuaded. Extreme Fire. Tao Lord Cloud Rain stood out as well with a faint smile. If you want to go against the bigger picture, you'll only bring destruction. Extreme Fire, hand him over. Hand him over. Tao Lord Fire Cloud, Tao Lord Breaking Skies and Tao Lord Cloud Sun stood out one after another. The 4 immortal sects and 2 monasteries were attacking at the same time. There was probably no faction in Tianhuang mainland that could withstand such pressure, let alone the 4 unorthodox groups. Send the order. Hakara Dojin stood up as well and said slowly, expressionlessly, whoever dares to make a move in 100 Refinement sect will be killed without mercy. How dare you? Tao Lord Firecloud's gaze turned cold as he grit his teeth. 100 Refinement sect has already declined. If we die here, 100 Refinement sect won't be able to bear the responsibility. Try moving and see if I dare to kill you. Hakadojin's gaze was scorching and the flames in his eyes seemed to be burning. Both sides were on the verge of breaking out into a huge battle. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others did not dare to act rashly either. Hakara Dojin's methods and boldness were even stronger than they had imagined. Even the 4 immortal sects and 2 Buddhist monasteries could not suppress him. They were worried that if they attacked, Hakara Dojin would truly disregard everything and kill them. However, Hakara Dojin had reservations as well. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others were different from Tao Lord Red Tiger. Tao Lord Red Tiger came from Tyrant Emperor Mountain, one of the upper sections. If he dared to make a move in 100 Refinement sect, so be it. However, each of these people before him had a greater background than the other. If he really killed these people here, 100 Refinement sect would probably be in trouble. Right then, the voice of 100 Refinement sect disciples sounded from outside. Patriarch Tao Lord Li Ling is here to visit. Many Tao Lords were shocked when they heard that voice. This was an itinerant cultivator who traveled alone. However, his combat strength was extremely terrifying and he was ranked 10th on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. That person isn't dead yet? Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned. Extreme Fire, I heard that you're still alive. I'm here to visit you. A cultivator walked in from outside. He was tall and slender with long hair that draped over his shoulders. He was slovenly and had a lazy expression as he laughed. Patriarch, Tao Lord Essence Dragon is here to greet you. Patriarch, Tao Lord Blue Flame is here to greet you. Patriarch, Tao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect is here to greet you. Chapter 977. Soaring Feather Sect, one of the 9 immortal sects. Tao Lord Divine Moon was also a Tao Lord from thousands of years ago and made a name for himself early on. Extreme Fire, how have you been? The moment Tao Lord Divine Moon entered the hall, he cupped his fists and smiled at Hakara Dojin. At this point, the Tao Lords of the 6 major immortal sects of the Middle Continent were all present. Dharma Tao Jun, Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others who entered earlier could be ignored. But now, even Tao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect had come to congratulate Extreme Fire. Everyone had no choice but to re-evaluate 100 Refinement sect's status in the cultivation world. Or rather, they had to re-evaluate Hakara Dojin's status. All the Tao Lords had arrived to congratulate him. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect was invigorated. Normally speaking, at least half of the weapons in the cultivation world came from 100 Refinement sect. 20% of the remaining half came from the foundations of the various major sections, 20% came from ruins, cave abodes, secret realms and inheritance grounds. The remaining 10% came from other weapon refinement sections. As the number 1 weapon refinement grandmaster of 100 Refinement sect, Hakara Dojin's status and influence in the cultivation world was imaginable. There were very few Mahayana realm experts among the 4 unorthodox groups. That was because every cultivator had a limited amount of mental energy. If they had any accomplishments in unorthodox methods such as weapon refinement, their cultivation would definitely be delayed. In the history of 100 Refinement sect, Hakara Dojin was one of the few people who had reached the peak of weapon refinement and cultivation. He was also a monster incarnate that countless seniors of the sect had high hopes for and believed could enter the Mahayana realm. That was also the reason why Hakara Dojin's return caused the entire 100 Refinement sect to operate, and even conjoint body mighty figures were willing to obey him. Men, take a seat. When he saw his old friends come to congratulate him, a smile finally appeared on Hakara Dojin's face as he instructed. Dharma Daojun came to congratulate him one after another. It was a shocking scene that even Dao Lord Immortal Sword could not have such an impact. The expressions of Dao Lord Immortal Sword and the others darkened. In this way, it was even more unrealistic for them to make a move. At least, with their status, it was almost impossible for them to get Suzumo out of Hokkaido-jin's hands. Right then, 100 Refinement Sect cultivator walked in hurriedly with a bewildered expression. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Dao Lord Shura of the Fiend Sects is outside." Dao Lord Immortal Sword and Hokkaido-jin both frowned. The two of them looked at each other without saying a word. Neither party knew why the demon cult Shura came to visit them. "Shura, what is he doing here?" Dao Lord Cloud Rain frowned deeply. As a member of the demon sect, he had a relatively better understanding of the demon sect. Shura was the most terrifying monster in the evil cult in recent years. He was bloodthirsty, eccentric, and had no scruples when he did things. It was said that this person had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm a few decades ago. On Dao Lord Immortal Sword's side, apart from Dao Lord Cloud Rain who was from the Fiend Sects, the other Dao Lords did not have much interaction with this generation's Shura. As for Hokkaido-jin, he was an expert from 5,000 years ago and did not know Shura at all. Suzumo was the only one whose heart skipped a beat as a strange glint flashed through his eyes. Shura? Could it be Yen Beichin? If it was Yen Beichin, there was a high chance that he was here to help him. Shura sect was in the Middle Continent and it was only logical for Shura to know about the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Just as Suzumo was about to send a voice transmission, Hokkaido-jin said slowly, "Invite him in." In Hokkaido-jin's heart, no matter which side this person was on, he would be able to handle it. Not long after, a black-robed man walked in with a cold expression. His face was sharp and he wielded a long saber that was filled with blood chi. There were streaks of blood around the saber that resembled blood vessels. It was as though fresh blood was flowing within and the stench of blood filled the air. Suzumo's eyes lit up. It was indeed Shura Yen Beichin. Just as he was about to speak, Yen Beichin's gaze swept past his eyes casually. His gaze was unfamiliar and did not pause at all, as though the two of them had never met before. Suzumo's heart skipped a beat and he did not take the initiative to greet him. Although he was puzzled, he believed that Yen Beichin's actions must have a deeper meaning. "Shura, what are you doing here?" Dao Lord Cloud Rain asked with a frown. "If you can come, why can't I?" Yen Beichin swept his gaze and asked indifferently. Dao Lord Cloud Rain's expression darkened as he harumphed and did not continue asking. "You're a guest. Take a seat." Hokkaido-jin waved his hand and said. 100 Refinement Sect cultivator moved a chair in fear and placed it in front of Yen Beichin. With a terrified expression, he turned and left hurriedly. Yen Beichin did not thank him and sat down right away. The blood-colored saber in his hands was placed horizontally on his knees and his eyes were half closed, as though he was asleep. Nobody knew why he was here. Dao Lord Immortal Sword's gaze flickered as he suddenly said, "Extreme fire, now that things have come to this, both of us will only suffer if we fight. I have a suggestion." Hokkaido-jin raised his brow. "The two of us did not have enough fun the previous time we fought. Why don't we make use of this opportunity to fight?" Dao Lord Immortal Sword took the initiative to challenge. He said that to remind Hokkaido-jin. After the battle at Thousand Demon Valley, he already knew that Suzumo was the one who snatched the heaven-slaying sword art. Dao Lord Immortal Sword knew that the heaven-slaying sword art was with Suzumo this time round and would definitely not return empty-handed. However, this was 100 Refinement Sect. If both sides were to fight, he might not be able to gain an advantage. However, he was absolutely confident in his combat strength. If he could make use of this battle to suppress Hokkaido-jin, he could use Hokkaido-jin to exchange for Suzumo. "You want to fight me?" Hokkaido-jin laughed with flames burning in his eyes. Dao Lord Immortal Sword smiled gently and mocked, "Why? The number one of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago is already afraid?" When he heard that, Suzumo's heart skipped a beat. It was only at this moment that he truly realized Hokkaido-jin's status in the cultivation world 5,000 years ago. The number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking coupled with his status as a weapon refinement grandmaster, even conjoint body mighty figures could not compare to his influence. I think that works. Tao Lord Cloud Rain clapped his hands. One is the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago, and the other is the number 1 of the current Dharma characteristic ranking. It's rare for us to meet. Why don't we fight and broaden our horizons? Grandmaster, there's no need for us to fight. That's right. You've just reconstructed your body and are definitely not familiar with controlling and sensing it. There's no need for you to take the risk. Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the others hurriedly sent voice transmissions to persuade him. Most importantly, Hakka-Dojin was extremely famous 5,000 years ago and was at his peak. However, 5,000 years had passed. For the Dharma Daojun who had a lifespan of 10,000 years, Hakka-Dojin was already in his late stages and was definitely not a match for Tao Lord Immortal Sword at his peak. Hakka-Dojin was indifferent and stood up slowly with a surging battle intent. Very good. I haven't fought for 5,000 years and was looking for an opponent. You came at the right time. Fight. Hakka-Dojin hollered and dermic powers surged within his body as he conjured a scarlet spear in reverse. It was almost transparent and scorching hot, as though it had been burned for 7 days and 7 nights. Chapter 978. Swoosh. Hakka-Dojin tossed in reverse and a red light flashed. In the blink of an eye, the fire spear had already arrived before Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the surrounding air was already burning. Many Tao Lords retreated. If they were too close to a battle of this level, they would be embroiled in it. Clang. There was no way to see Tao Lord Immortal Sword's actions clearly. A chilling sword with 6 dermic patterns appeared in his hand. A connate Tao Lord dermic weapon. Although the fire spear was fast, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's sword technique was even faster. After drawing his sword, he slashed. Buzz. The sword struck the tip of the spear and sliced it into pieces along the red body of the spear, producing an ear-piercing sound. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had witnessed Tao Lord Immortal Sword's methods. However, that was only a clone of Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Now that he was watching the battle up close, Su Zimo truly felt the terror of the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. The two of them merely exchanged a single move and the dermic powers in the entire hall seemed to have been sucked dry as the entire hall trembled. After destroying Hakka-Dojin's fire spear with a single slash, Tao Lord Immortal Sword did not stop at all. In a flash, he transformed into a sword beam and arrived before Hakka-Dojin instantly. He knew that the Dharma Daojun was definitely not his match in melee combat. Therefore, he shortened the distance right away, wanting to suppress Hakka-Dojin with his supreme sword Tao. Boom! Hakka-Dojin's expression was unchanged as he tapped his glabella gently with his finger. A scarlet tripod flew out and landed in front of him, blocking the incoming sword. That tripod was also a connate Tao Lord dermic weapon. The moment the two of them exchanged blows, they had already summoned their destiny dermic weapons. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's figure flashed once more and circled around the scarlet tripod, arriving behind Hakka-Dojin. His movement technique was way too fast. Even some of the Dharma Daojun present could not see it clearly, let alone Jining Jinjuan and Void Reversions. Is this the sword sex sword evasion technique? It truly lives up to its reputation. Tao Lord Immortal Sword killed many strong enemies in the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking with his hand sword escape technique. No one in the same realm can match up to such a movement technique. The Dharma Daojun present today were not nobodies. They all had their own feelings about this battle. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's judgment was very accurate. He held a 3-foot-long green sword in his hand and relied on the sword escape technique to move nimbly. As for Hakka-Dojin's destiny dermic weapon, it was a crimson cauldron. Although it was powerful, it was not flexible enough. Hakka-Dojin didn't even turn around. He formed a seal with his hands and lightly shouted, "Disperse!" Bush, bush, bush. Beside Hakka-Dojin, 3 crimson flames instantly appeared and slowly revolved around him. Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. Su Zimo, Nangong Ling and the others recognized it right away. It was a dharmic art from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra that could be used for both offense and defense. The moment Tao Lord Immortal Sword arrived behind Hakka-Dojin, it was struck by a ball of flames. Instantly, flames ignited on the sword and its temperature rose rapidly. Destroy! Tao Lord Immortal Sword hollered and sword chi burst forth from his body, tearing through the void. All life seemed to be destroyed by the sword chi. Lifeless sword art. Sword cultivators were known for their killing. Tao Lord Immortal Sword had even pushed his killing techniques to their limits. Hakka-Dojin had already turned around and his eyes lit up. His hands conjured hand seals repeatedly and the 3 balls of flames that were initially revolving around him gathered rapidly, forming a gigantic fireball. Samadhi Tao Fire. Swoosh. The fireball collided fiercely towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Everywhere it passed, dharmic powers were incinerated and even space distorted. Lifeless sword art, slash. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's blood chi burst forth and his sword buzzed. He conjured a sword art with one hand and waved his sword with the other, slashing down viciously at the incoming fireball. Boom! The Samadhi Tao fire was split into pieces by the sword. Not good, even the Samadhi Tao fire can't defend against the sharpness of Immortal Sword. Tao Lord Scarlet Star's expression changed as he realized that something was amiss. Su Zimo's gaze sharpened slightly. He could clearly see that after the Samadhi Tao fire was destroyed by Tao Lord Immortal Sword, Hakka-Dojin's dharmic art did not stop. The shattered balls of flames floated towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword. When they arrived, they gathered again and formed a ball of Samadhi Tao fire. Many Tao Lords were in an uproar. This kind of method of controlling fire really made people feel amazed. Su Zimo was stunned as well. To think that fire dharmic arts could be controlled to such an extent. Even the bystanders were surprised, let alone Tao Lord Immortal Sword who was in the midst of it. He destroyed the Samadhi Tao fire with a single slash. Before he could retract his sword, a ball of Samadhi Tao fire had already arrived before him. Although the ball of flames was much smaller than just now, it was still fatal. At that moment, it was already too late to retract his sword. Lifeless sword body. Tao Lord Immortal Sword roared furiously. Suddenly, a gigantic phantom charged out of his body and burst forth with endless sword chi, destroying the Samadhi Tao fire before him instantly. Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. At this point of the battle, to everyone's surprise, Tao Lord Immortal Sword was at a disadvantage and was forced to release his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. 89 feet. It's already infinitely close to 90 feet. How impressive! Back when Immortal Sword obtained the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking, this Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was only 85 feet tall. To think that it would have grown to 89 feet now. I reckon that there's a high chance that he can cultivate a 90 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. The outcome of this battle between the two of them will probably depend on the clash of their Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics. As the Tao Lords discussed, the gigantic Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic revealed its sharpness and charged towards Hakka-Dojin like an unsheathed sword. Boom! A loud bang sounded from Hakka-Dojin's body as well. A gigantic phantom burst forth from above his head and rose rapidly. Its entire body was scarlet and burned with raging flames, emitting a scorching and violent aura. The gazes of many Tao Lords changed gradually with grim expressions. Suddenly, they realized that the Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic before them seemed to be half a head taller than Tao Lord Immortal Sword's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. This Dharma characteristic, Heaven's 90 feet tall, Supreme Dharma characteristic. 9 was the extreme number, and a Dharma characteristic that was 90 feet tall could be called a Supreme Dharma characteristic no matter what type of Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic it was. What a surprise! Extreme fire. Seems like he's prepared to teach his junior a lesson. Tao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect could not help but praise. 90 feet, Supreme Dharma characteristic? Tao Lord Cloud Rain's eyes widened in disbelief. 5,000 years ago, Hakka-Dojin's Dharma characteristic was only 80 feet tall and was about the same as him. How did Hakawa-Dojin's heaven and earth dharma characteristic reach such a terrifying realm 5,000 years later after he lost his body? Everyone thought that Hakawa-Dojin's combat strength would definitely weaken after he lost his body and entered his later years after his peak. However, apart from Suzumo, no one knew how Hakawa-Dojin spent the past 5,000 years. In the depths of the cold lake, Hakawa-Dojin fought against the unknown poison alone for 5,000 years. It would have been fine if Hakawa-Dojin had died. Now that he was reborn, his essence spirit had long become incomparably condensed and pure under that unimaginable tempering, reaching a terrifying height. It had even surpassed the Dharma characteristic realm. Even if Tao Lord Immortal Sword did not invite him to fight, Extreme Fire would have fought him. Extreme Fire wanted to make use of Tao Lord Immortal Sword to take that most important step. It crashed down with a loud bang, causing the entire ground to tremble. Heaven and earth dharma characteristics were phantoms created by cultivators. However, when the arm was sliced down, it was as though it was corporeal. Even though it was a severed arm, it was enough to kill the Dharma Daojun who was of average strength. Although the scarlet flame dermic body only had a single arm left, it seized the opportunity to punch through the chest of the lifeless sword body. This clash seemed like an internecine outcome. However, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression turned paler. The fist of the scarlet flame dermic body pierced the chest of the lifeless sword body and a series of scarlet flames burst forth from the wound in a bedazzling manner. Swoosh! The flames intensified and burst forth from the chest of the lifeless sword body, engulfing his entire body from the inside out. If this kind of flame attacked from the outside, the lifeless sword body could still destroy it with its sharp and fierce sword chi. But now, those flames were burst forth from the body of the lifeless sword body. Roar! Tao Lord Immortal Sword let out a deep roar and his body trembled. His essence spirit was pushed to its limits and dermic powers were injected continuously. His heaven and earth dharma characteristic let out a painful roar in the flames as well. Burn! Hakawa-Dojin hollered and willed. The scarlet flame dermic body strode forward and opened its mouth, spitting out a stream of scarlet lava that landed on the lifeless sword body. Shing! The sword chi on the lifeless sword body was extinguished by the terrifying lava instantly. The lifeless sword body struggled and roared. Its eyes, ears, mouth, and nostrils were all emitting raging flames and thick smoke. The flames from both inside and outside incinerated the lifeless sword body completely. When they saw that, many Tao Lords were dumbfounded and could not conceal the shock in their eyes. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was defeated. The number 1 of the current Dharma characteristic ranking had lost to the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago who was already past his peak and in his later years. Although the scarlet flame dermic body lost an arm, it was still around and the flames on its body did not diminish. It could still release terrifying power. As for the lifeless sword body, it was completely burned into nothingness. Boom! The scarlet flame dermic body with a severed arm roared and strode forward. Its gigantic foot that was burning with flames stomped down towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword. This time, it carried a supreme pressure, as if it was crushing an ant. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's face was pale as he swallowed an elixir and forcefully channeled his essence spirit. Conjuring hand seals, he conjured a gigantic sword and stabbed it towards the incoming foot. Clang! An ear-piercing sound could be heard when the sword struck the foot. Tao Lord Immortal Sword shuddered. Then, under the gazes of countless people, this huge long sword was instantly burned red and almost transparent. Snap! The sword broke. Exclamation point! As though he was struck by lightning, Tao Lord Immortal Sword retreated before the scarlet flame dermic body's foot landed and dodged the calamity. Even so, he was still seriously injured. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood. A crushing defeat. Without his heaven and earth dharma characteristic, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's strength was not enough to fight against a supreme dharma characteristic. Even a supreme dharma characteristic with a severed arm could suppress it. Boom! 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 The scarlet flame dermic body strode towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword with torrential flames. "Fellow Taoists, save me!" Tao Lord Immortal Sword yelled with a terrified expression. Just now, Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace and the others were still aggressive. However, at that moment, they were wary and did not dare to attack. They were not a match even for the damaged Scarlet Flame dermic body. This battle had utterly stunned all of the Tao Lords. It was clear that Hakuei Dojin was filled with killing intent and was invincible. Who would dare to face him head-on? Tao Lord Cloud Rain's gaze flickered, but he did not attack. The other Tao Lords did not dare to, but he had another motive. If Hakuei Dojin were to disregard everything and kill Tao Lord Immortal Sword, there was a high chance that Sword Sect would take revenge on 100 Refinement Sect. At that time, many sects and factions might be implicated. The fight between the righteous sects was beneficial to him. Although he had helped Tao Lord Immortal Sword fight for the heaven-slaying sword art, that was because of the benefits promised by Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Fairy Snowdrift had an indifferent expression. Before she came, she had already stated that she would remain neutral and would not interfere in the fight between the two sides. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's heart turned cold when he saw the reactions of the many Tao Lords. Chapter 980. Senior Brother. With a soft holler, Sword Sect's Qin Pianran stood out. Boom! Qin Pianran's body swayed and a phantom charged out of her body with sword qi, charging towards the scarlet flame dermic body without hesitation. In a situation where all the Tao Lords were retreating, afraid that they would not be able to dodge in time, she stood out. Qin Pianran's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was known as the startling sword body and was also one of the legacy Dharma characteristics of Sword Sect. It was 70 feet tall. Under normal circumstances, the startling sword body was definitely a top-tier Dharma characteristic. However, in the face of the 90 feet tall Supreme Dharma characteristic, her Dharma characteristic was like a child that charged forward like a moth darting into a flame. Qin Pianran ignored her Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. In a flash, she arrived beside Tao Lord Immortal Sword and helped him up before retreating rapidly. Boom! The two Dharma images of Heaven and Earth collided, exploding with a loud bang that shook the heavens and the earth. Qin Pianran's startling sword body only managed to defend for a moment before it was shattered by the scarlet flame dermic body that had lost an arm and turned into nothingness. Qin Pianran's essence spirit was shaken and grunted dully. She staggered and her face turned much paler. However, because of that delay, she had already escaped the battlefield with Tao Lord Immortal Sword and was temporarily out of danger. "Junior sister, thank you." Tao Lord Immortal Sword panted heavily and felt a sense of lingering fear. Instinctively, he gripped Qin Pianran's slender hand tightly and his palms were filled with cold sweat. "Senior brother, it's good that you're fine. That person is too strong. Let's return to the sect first." Qin Pianran's heart skipped a beat when Tao Lord Immortal Sword grabbed her hand. Her face flushed red as she persuaded softly. Tao Lord Immortal Sword gradually composed himself and calmed down. When he saw Qin Pianran's blushing face, his heart skipped a beat and he whispered, "Junior sister, I understand your feelings for me. Don't worry, I won't let you down." "Yes," Qin Pianran lowered her head and replied softly. After so many years, she had finally heard these words from her senior brother. At this moment, she felt incomparably happy. Her nose was sour and her eyes were red. Many of the Tao Lords present remained calm when they saw this, but two of them sneered inwardly. One of them was Tao Lord Cloud Rain. He was an expert in love and was experienced. Naturally, he could tell that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was merely patronizing Qin Pianran. The other was Fairy Snowflake. That was because previously, Tao Lord Immortal Sword had even expressed his love for her, but she rejected him. The Crimson Flame battle form stood in the middle of the battlefield, its long crimson hair dancing in the wind. Its body was covered in raging flames, and its might was rampant. It did not continue to pursue. Hakuei Dojin looked at Tao Lord Immortal Sword, who had fled into the distance with a mocking look in his eyes as he declared, "The Dharma characteristic ranking this time round is truly lousy." Even the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking is nothing much. Tao Lord Immortal Sword grit his teeth and veins popped on his forehead with an indignant expression. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, this kind of crushing defeat caused him to lose all face. It would not take long for the news of the defeat to be spread across the entire Middle Continent and the cultivation world. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's heart was filled with endless hatred and anger. His gaze shifted between Hakaedojin and Su Zimo. Hakaedojin was the one who gave him today's humiliation, and Su Zimo was definitely involved as well. If he could have obtained the heaven-slaying sword art back in Thousand Demon Valley and cultivated it, the outcome of today's battle would have been completely different. Hakaedojin waved his hand and said coldly, "Get lost. Remember not to come to 100 Refinement Sect to strut around in the future. I'm only teaching you a lesson this time round." That old thing. Tao Lord Cloud Rain cursed internally. He thought that Hakaedojin would start a massacre in his rage and become hot-blooded, sowing enmity with the few major immortal sections. To think that Hakaedojin would stop in time. That was Hakaedojin. He had grasped the right amount of time in the middle. Not only did he not become enemies with the major immortal sects, he also achieved the goal of establishing dominance and intimidating them. Today, not only did they have to retreat, anyone in the cultivation world who wanted to touch Su Zimo would have to go through some trouble in the future. A situation like this where they charged into 100 Refinement Sect to demand for someone would never happen again. Extreme Fire, I'll definitely take revenge for today's humiliation in the future. Tao Lord Immortal Sword clenched his fists tightly and said through gritted teeth, "You won't have a chance," Hakaedojin said indifferently. "I have to thank you for being able to sense the opportunity to break through so quickly." Many Tao Lords were shocked. Breakthrough? If he broke through from the Dharma characteristic realm, wouldn't he be at the conjoint body realm? Tao Lord Immortal Sword could tell what Hakaedojin meant as well. His blood chi attacked his heart and he spat out another mouthful of blood, looking much more dispirited. It was a crushing defeat. Hakaedojin did not take him seriously at all in this battle. Hakaedojin was using him to establish his dominance, intimidate and even use him as a stepping stone. "Senior brother, let's go." When he saw Tao Lord Immortal Sword in such a state, Qin Pianran felt a sense of pity and persuaded gently, "Senior brother, you're a titular disciple of the sect and your talent is definitely not inferior to anyone. Go back and continue cultivating. You'll definitely be able to make a comeback." Titular disciple? Talent? All those words were extremely ear-piercing to Tao Lord Immortal Sword. In fact, he even felt that Qin Pianran was mocking him. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression was cold as he flung Qin Pianran's arm away viciously. He had completely forgotten that the woman beside him had just saved his life. Qin Pianran sighed gently but was not angry. In her opinion, anyone would lose their composure after receiving such a blow. She believed that her senior brother was not targeting her. Fellow Taoists who are here to congratulate can stay as guests in 100 Refinement Sect. Hakaedojin surveyed his surroundings and said slowly, "As for those with ulterior motives, please return. Men, send the guests off." Many Tao Lords could sense that Hakaedojin's aura was rising continuously and had reached a critical point. Hakaedojin was about to break through to the conjoint body realm. It's a rare opportunity. I'll be thick-skinned and stay to observe. Tao Lord Divine Moon smiled gently. Not bad. To think that I would have such an opportunity after coming to congratulate you. Another Dharma Tao Jun clapped and smiled. Not everyone had the chance to witness a breakthrough to the conjoint body realm. For all the Tao Lords present, it was an extremely precious experience. As for Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others, they were naturally embarrassed to stay after being chased away. All of them turned to leave with dark expressions. "If you allow it, I'd like to stay and observe as well." Fairy Snowdrift cupped her fists. "Sure," Hakaedojin nodded. Fairy Snowdrift had remained neutral right from the beginning and Hakaedojin would not target her. "Hee, Extreme Fire, see you in the future." Tao Lord Cloud Rain knew his place and cupped his fists before turning to leave. Su Zimo looked at Yen Beichen. Although nobody knew the motive of Yen Beichen's visit, If he wanted to stay, Suzumo would definitely speak up for him and Hakodojin would not reject him either. However, at that moment, Yenbeichen stood up expressionlessly and turned to leave without saying a single word the entire time. The remaining Tao Lords all frowned, completely confused. Chapter 981. What is this Shura doing here? Did he come to 100 Refinement Sect to take a look before leaving? I'm not sure. That person has always been unscrupulous. Who knows what he's thinking? He's probably here for Suzumo as well. However, when he saw Hakodojin's combat strength, he knew that he was no match for him and fled. Many Tao Lords looked at Yenbeichen's back view and discussed softly. Suzumo frowned slightly. He was probably the only one who knew that Yenbeichen definitely had a motive for coming here and it was very likely for him. Everyone, please come to the inner hall. Hakodojin said and nodded to Suzumo before turning to walk into 100 Refinement Sect. Hakodojin was about to break through to the conjoint body realm and this was an important matter. Suzumo did not disturb him because of Yenbeichen. Suzumo pondered for a moment and walked out of 100 Refinement Sect alone. Uncle Master, where are you going? Tao Lord Scarlet Star was about to leave when he bumped into Suzumo and asked casually. It's nothing. I'm going out for a walk, Suzumo replied ambiguously. Tao Lord Scarlet Star reminded, Uncle Master, be careful. Don't leave 100 Refinement Sect. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others shouldn't have gone far yet. With that said, Tao Lord Scarlet Star left in a hurry to inform the elders of the sect. Hakodojin was about to break through to the Dharma characteristic realm and all the conjoint body elders of 100 Refinement Sect had to appear to protect him. Nothing must happen during this process. At that moment, everyone's attention was on Hakodojin and no one noticed Suzumo's departure. Suzumo continued forward and sped outside 100 Refinement Sect. Passing by the entrance of 100 Refinement Sect, Suzumo came before the gatekeeper boy and asked, Where did the Dharma Daojun go? Over there. The gatekeeper boy pointed at him. Suzumo nodded. Without hesitation, he ran in the direction the boy had pointed. Even if he met Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others, he was not afraid. Although his battle prowess was inferior, he could rely on his many trump cards, such as the Blood Escape art, to escape with his life. After running for a short distance, Suzumo's heart stirred as if he had sensed something. He lowered his body and his entire body was almost touching the ground. His hands and feet moved at the same time. His body wriggled like a huge python and slowly slithered forward without making a sound. Suzumo only stopped when he arrived at a dense patch of grass. He squinted his eyes and looked ahead. His ears twitched as he listened carefully. There were a few figures standing in the air in front of him. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Qin Pianran of the Sword Sect. There was also Tao Lord Cloud Rain, Tao Lord Breaking Sky of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace, Tao Lord Cloud Son of Primordial Chaos Sect, Monk Kong Wen of Formless Temple, and Monk Liao Ming of Wisdom Temple. There was also Tao Lord Heaven Sea of the Five Elements Sect, one of the upper sections. The 9 Tao Lords stood together. Another figure stood opposite them. He wore a black robe, had a cold expression, and carried a blood-red saber on his shoulder. Shura Yenbeichen. Shura, why are you following us? Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned slightly and asked impatiently. Shura was eccentric and bloodthirsty. Even people of the fiend sex were unwilling to interact with him and avoided him. Yenbeichen replied indifferently, My Tao title is Shura. Naturally, I'm here to kill. Tao Lord Cloud Rain asked, Kill who? All of you, Yenbeichen said 2 words and the scene fell silent. Fufu. Ha. Immediately after, Tao Lord Breaking Skies, Tao Lord Fire Cloud and the others laughed mockingly. Are you joking with us? Chaos Essence Sect's Tao Lord Cloud Sun sneered. Among them, they were either at late stage or perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Furthermore, there was an existence like Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Although Shura was extremely famous, he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. Everyone truly did not take him seriously. If not for the fact that Tao Lord Cloud Rain was present, They would have killed the Azura before them in the name of slaying fiends. Among the 9 Tao Lords, there were a few who did not laugh. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was one of them. That was because he knew that Shura never joked. If Shura said that he wanted to kill, he would definitely kill. Tao Lord Immortal Sword frowned and looked at Shura with wariness in his eyes. If he was in his peak condition, he could naturally suppress Shura with ease. But now that he was severely injured and his heaven and earth dharma characteristic was destroyed, he could not condense it within a short period of time. If he were to truly fight against Shura, the outcome would be unpredictable. Thankfully, there were 9 of them and there should not be any danger. Tao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements sect knew that he was the weakest among them and did not have the right to mock Shura. Therefore, he coughed gently and asked, "Fellow Taoist, we have no feud with you. Why do you want to kill us?" Shura never needs a reason to kill. Yen Beichen's gaze intensified and killing intent burst forth. Without any warning, his shoulders shrugged and the blood-colored saber jumped up as though it was alive. The blood vessels on the saber expanded and blood chi filled the air. There was a flash of blood. It was too fast. Tao Lord Heaven Sea was stunned. The next moment, his head flew high into the air and sprayed blood everywhere. In midair, the headless corpse fell. His essence spirit had long been minced by the sharp saber chi and he did not even have a chance to escape. Tao Lord Heaven Sea was dead. Even until his death, he did not understand why he died. More than that, he did not expect Shura to be so decisive and not give him any chance to react. Su Zimo, who was sprawled in the grass, was shocked when he saw that and a look of realization flashed through his eyes. He finally understood why Shura was here. Shura was here to kill. Kill for him. Su Zimo was right. News of the Thousand Crane Tea Party spread throughout the Middle Continent and Yen Beichen naturally heard about it as well. Furthermore, Yen Beichen knew that the immortal sects such as Sword Sect and Chaos Essence Sect would definitely not let this matter rest and would definitely take action. Therefore, even though he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm, he rushed over fearlessly when he heard that many Tao Lords were looking for trouble with Su Zimo. It was just like how Yen Beichen, who was still at the Void Reversion realm, crossed a large region and traveled day and night for a year when he found out that Misty Peak was in trouble. In the end, he resolved the crisis of Misty Peak almost single-handedly. Everyone thought that Shura was heartless and did not care about his family. However, Su Zimo knew that even though the Azura attained his Tao through killing, there was still a boiling hot blood flowing through his bones. The only thing that was heartless was the Shura saber in his hands. Although Hakaridogen was strong, he was still wary and did not dare to kill Tao Lord Immortal Sword for real. Therefore, he stopped in time after achieving his goal of establishing dominance and intimidation. After all, Hakaridogen had to consider 100 Refinement Sect. As for Yen Beichen, he had no qualms. That was because he was Shura who attained his Tao through killing. Hakaridogen was only teaching Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others a lesson. However, Shura Yen Beichen had no intention of letting the 9 of them return alive. Many Tao Lords were shocked and retreated. Apart from Tao Lord Cloud Rain, no one expected Shura to dare to attack 1-on-9. Less than that, no one expected Shura's methods to be so terrifying that Tao Lord Heaven Sea was killed by a single slash before he could even react. Chapter 982. Shura. Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect glared and hollered, "We didn't attack you on account of Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Don't push your luck. Cut the crap. I'll kill Cloud Rain too." Yen Beichen sneered and slashed forward with his blood-colored saber. Blood chi filled the air and a gigantic purgatory appeared in front of everyone, enveloping the remaining 8 Tao Lords. Purgatory saber intent. At this point of cultivation, one could conjure dermic powers to materialize and fight against the top dermic arts head-on. Although Yen Beichen had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm, his saber intent had already been cultivated to the peak. Instantly, the entire battlefield was filled with a sinister aura and fiend shadows. Blood flowed like rivers and corpses were strewn everywhere as ghostly wails could be heard. Heavenly Dipper Fist. Tao Lord Breaking Skies hollered and his blood chi surged as he channeled dermic powers and punched the surrounding purgatory. Firmament Art. Tao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect condensed a top-tier dermic art of his sect, wanting to break through the purgatory and communicate with heaven and earth. Amitba. Monk Kong, one of formless monastery, pressed his palms together and conjured hand seals, forming a formless dermic seal that smashed towards the surrounding purgatory as well. The Dharma Daojun present were all paragons of the various immortal and Buddhist sections. Otherwise, they would not have dared to rush to 100 Refinement sect to ask for him. There was no need to say anything else. The Tao Lords had a tacit understanding and attacked at the same time, prepared to shatter the purgatory. In the eyes of many Tao Lords, although Shura was a titular disciple, he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm after all. It was a fool's dream for him to want to fight against 8 alone. However, everyone had overlooked one thing. Among them, there were only 2 titular disciples. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was severely injured and was supported by Qin Pianran. Neither of them attacked. As for Tao Lord Cloud Rain, he frowned and conjured a hand seal. A mist formed around him to defend against the Purgatory Saber intent without taking the initiative to attack. Among the people present, Tao Lord Cloud Rain was the one who knew Shura the best. If he went all out, he had a 60% chance of suppressing Shura. Although the 2 of them were both titular disciples and his cultivation realm was a level higher, his cultivation techniques and secret skills were not lethal enough against Shura. Shura was merciless and killed to prove his Tao. His 7 emotions threads and 6 desires palm had little effect on Shura. Moreover, Shura was merciless and bloodthirsty. He didn't even recognize his own family. If he really fought with his life on the line, even he would be afraid. Furthermore, both of them were titular disciples of the fiend sects, and there was no need for them to fight the moment they met. At that thought, Tao Lord Cloud Rain conjured a dermic art and defended passively. Apart from the 3 of them, there were only 5 Dharma Daojun in the purgatory who had launched a counterattack. White Bones. Yen Beichen shouted and waved his long saber. The dense saber aura surged within the purgatory. Crush. The corpses that had been lying motionless in the river of blood seemed to have sensed some sort of bizarre power and stood up one after another. One after another, they were densely packed. All of those skeletons were paragons that died in the hands of Yen Beichen when they were alive. There were not many nameless people. Bang, bang, bang. The counterattack of Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others was blocked by the skeletons and could not shake the purgatory. However, the blood in the purgatory increased and was thicker than the ankles of everyone present. A sinister wind blew and the stench of blood filled the air. The skeletons could not defend against the dermic arts and weapons of Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others and retreated continuously. However, as long as they were not torn apart, even if they lost their arms and heads, the skeletons could still stand up and continue charging towards the 5 Tao Lords. Normally speaking, Buddhist dermic arts were the most effective against dermic arts of the fiend sections. However, the Buddhist dermic arts of Monk Kong Wen and Monk Liaoming could not suppress Shura at all. Water could counter fire, but fire could also burn water into nothingness. Sanskrit echoed endlessly and a Buddhist light filled the air. However, the wails and howls of ghosts were even louder in the purgatory and blood chi surged into the skies, suppressing the Buddhist light viciously. Not only were the 5 Tao Lords unable to break through the purgatory, they were even in a stalemate. When he saw that, Qin Pianran asked softly with a grim expression, "Senior brother, can you do it?" Tao Lord Immortal Sword was silent as he looked at Tao Lord Cloud Rain without saying anything. Naturally, Qin Pianran noticed Tao Lord Cloud Rain's actions as well and whispered, "Tao Lord Cloud Rain is someone of the fiend sects after all and has no intention of attacking. Let's join forces and kill this fiend together with fellow Taoists of the immortal sects." When he saw that Tao Lord Cloud Rain did not take the initiative to attack, Qin Pianran's idea was to stand out and fight Shura together with Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others. However, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's thoughts were on how to escape. Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Yen Beichen's glabella shone and a shuddering spirit consciousness fluctuation burst forth. A blood-colored saber formed from spirit consciousness appeared and slashed down viciously at Monk Liao Ming. Essence Spirit Secret Skill. Shura, Monk Liao Ming was alarmed. Before he could say anything, he hurriedly conjured his Essence Spirit Secret Skill as well, wanting to defend against the spirit consciousness blood saber. Boom! The two spirit consciousnesses collided. After a brief pause, Monk Liao Ming's spirit consciousness was sliced into two by Shura's spirit consciousness blood saber and entered his head. Monk Liao Ming's body stiffened and his eyes widened. Gradually, his gaze dissipated and his life force drained rapidly as well. The spirit consciousness blood saber slashed down, but there were no injuries on Monk Liao Ming's face. However, his essence spirit in his consciousness had already been sliced into two by the blood saber and was completely destroyed. This was a fight between essence spirits. The difference of a single move could mean the end of his life. Monk Liao Ming did not even have the chance to release his heaven and earth dharma characteristic. Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others were shocked. Cultivators would not use essence spirit secret skills in a fight unless they had no other choice. After all, a fight between essence spirits was way too dangerous. Many times, even if one could kill their opponent with essence spirit secret skills, their own essence spirits might be shaken or even injured. It was difficult to recover from an injured essence spirit. That would have a huge impact on a cultivator's future cultivation. Just now in the battle between Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Hakka Dojin in 100 Refinement Sect, both parties had already unleashed their true flames and released their heaven and earth dharma characteristics. However, they did not use their essence spirit secret skills. That was also to leave a way out for themselves. Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others had not expected that Shura would suddenly release his essence spirit secret skill after a short battle and leave no way out for himself. The Azura's killing intent was so heavy that it made one tremble in fear. Less than that, they had not expected Shura's essence spirit secret skill to be so terrifying that it could kill Monk Liao Ming instantly. What a lunatic! Tao Lord Cloud Rain cursed internally. Initially, he wanted to rely on his powerful strength to watch the battle from the side. But now that Shura had even released his essence spirit secret skill, he was afraid that the spirit consciousness blood saber would turn around and slash towards him. Others might not be able to do something like that, but Shura was definitely capable of it. The mist within Tao Lord Cloud Rain's body surged and pushed away the white skeletons that were charging over. Arriving beside the purgatory, he flipped his palm and landed it on the purgatory. Boom! The purgatory was penetrated by his palm. Tao Lord Cloud Rain moved and sped into the distance in a flash. He had already cultivated to this realm, and if nothing went wrong, he would definitely be able to advance to the conjoint body realm in the future. He truly did not want to provoke a ruthless person like Shura for no reason. Chapter 983. Tao Lord Cloud Rain's escape caused Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others to panic. The spirit consciousness blood saber descended once more and slashed towards Chaos Essence Sect's Tao Lord Cloud Sun. Fellow Taoists, help me! At the same time that Tao Lord Cloud Sun cried for help, he released his essence spirit secret skill right away. What a King lunatic! Tao Lord Breaking Skies cursed. Everyone fight it out. Tao Lord Fire Cloud roared. Die, fiend! Suddenly, Monk Kong Wen's Dharma characteristic turned solemn and golden light shone. The three of them released their essence spirit secret skills at the same time. God-slaying sword. Qin Pian Ran hollered softly and touched his glabella with his fingertip. A spirit consciousness sword was condensed and slashed towards the spirit consciousness blood saber. Tao Lord Immortal Sword watched coldly from the sidelines without attacking. Many spirit consciousnesses collided silently. However, under Su Zimo's gaze, the void where the spirit consciousnesses collided distorted and trembled with a shuddering power. The five Dharma Dao Jun shuddered. Tao Lord Cloud Sun suffered an even greater impact and grunted. As for the spirit consciousness blood saber, it was shattered by the impact of the five spirit consciousnesses as well. Yen Beichen's face turned pale instantly. However, he pursed his lips tightly and did not say anything. Su Zimo's heart sank. Judging from Yen Beichen's condition, his essence spirit seemed to have suffered quite a bit of shock as well and was most likely injured. The 5 Dharma Daojun were definitely not ordinary. Although Yen Beichen was a titular disciple, he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. It was already rare for him to be able to fight against the 5 Dharma Daojuan's essence spirits without being disadvantaged. Furthermore, he had killed the essence spirit of a Dao Lord before this. Su Zimo did not appear rashly. Given his strength, he would only be a burden if he rushed in. Instead, he would distract Yen Beichen. If someone released their heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, they could kill him with a casual flick of their fingers. Just as Su Zimo was worrying, Yen Beichen's eyes lit up. He didn't take a break to adjust himself. He stepped forward and attacked again. Within the purgatory, the blood river surged into the skies and created huge waves that enveloped Dao Lord Immortal's sword and the others. The white skeletons let out a series of roars and launched another attack. In the essence spirit fight just now, Dao Lord Cloud Sun's essence spirit suffered the greatest impact, and there was even a scar on it. Cosmic form. Dao Lord Yun Yang wanted to summon his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, but he was still a step too slow. Just as a phantom rushed out of his body, the blood river rushed over and the corpses surrounded him. Before the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was released, it was shattered. Dao Lord Cloud Sun opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Die. Yen Beichen's cold voice rang in his ears. Immediately after, a blood-red light flashed past his throat. The sharp saber chi burst forth and instantly killed his primordial spirit. Dao Lord Cloud Sun of Primordial Chaos sect was dead. Boom, boom, boom. That single delay allowed Dao Lord Breaking Skies, Dao Lord Fire Cloud and Monk Kong went to summon their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics one after another, and gigantic figures rose from the ground. Rumble. Boom. The white bone purgatory could not withstand the impact of the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics and was shattered, gradually dissipating. The 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were all more than 60 feet tall. To be able to cultivate a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 50 feet tall, one could already be considered a rather strong Dao Lord. To be able to condense a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was more than 60 feet tall, one could definitely be considered a paragon. If they were against an ordinary Dharma Daojun, they would be able to suppress their opponent. Unfortunately, they were facing Shura Yen Beichen. Boom. Yen Beichen's body swayed and a blood-red phantom rushed out from above his head. Instantly, it rose to a height of 60 feet and was still growing. 70 feet, 80 feet, 85 feet. This Azura Dharma body climbed all the way to a height of 85 feet before it stopped. Yen Beichen was at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. If he could condense a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 85 feet tall at early stage, there was a high chance that he could reach 89 feet and be comparable to Dao Lord Immortal Sword's lifeless sword body at perfected Dharma characteristic realm. If he had any great opportunity, it was not impossible for him to attain a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic. Generally speaking, cultivators would be able to condense a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic upon entering the Dharma characteristic realm. However, the initial height of the Dharma characteristic would determine its future potential. If a cultivator's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was only 10 feet tall or 20 feet tall at the beginning, even if that cultivator cultivated to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, his Dharma characteristic would definitely not exceed 50 feet. If that cultivator could condense a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 50 feet tall at early stage Dharma characteristic realm, there was a chance that the Dharma characteristic would grow to 60 feet tall or even break through 60 feet at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. For example, the legacy Dharma characteristic of Diamond Monastery, the 60 feet golden body. At early stage Dharma characteristic realm, one could condense a 60 feet tall golden body. This meant that when the monk of Diamond Monastery cultivated to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, his golden body could grow to a height of 70 feet. That was already a rather terrifying height. A heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 70 feet tall was already qualified to fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. But now, Yen Beichen's 85 feet tall Shura-dermic body caused Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others to panic and no longer have any thoughts of resisting. Skipped. Without hesitation, the three Tao Lords turned and fled, allowing their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics to block their backs. Kill. Yen Beichen hollered, and his blood-red Shura-dermic body had a torrential blood chi. Wielding a blood-red saber in its hands, it seemed to have transformed into a Shura as it strode towards the three Dharma Dao Jun. On the other side, Tao Lord Immortal Sword seized the opportunity to channel his essence spirit. Dermic powers surged within his body and he vanished, transforming into a sword beam that sped into the distance. Sword escape. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Qin Pianran's heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were destroyed by Hakura Dojin and could not be condensed yet. When Tao Lord Immortal Sword saw that the situation was amiss, he fled immediately. Before he left, he did not even inform Qin Pianran. Trying to escape? Yen Beichen sneered. The Shura-dermic body chased after Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the other two. However, he himself moved and raised the Shura saber in his hands, slashing forward. A gigantic blood-colored saber shadow descended from the skies and tore through the void, as though it wanted to slice the world into two. Instantly, it caught up to the sword beam in the distance and slashed down viciously. Although Yen Beichen was attacking Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others, in reality, half of his attention was focused on Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was definitely someone he had to kill. This person was vengeful and suffered great humiliation in 100 Refinement Sect. He hated Su Zimo to the core and would definitely cause trouble in the future if he was allowed to leave. The reason why Yen Beichen came today was to end everything. Senior brother, watch out. Right then, just as the blood-colored saber shadow was about to slash Tao Lord Immortal Sword, a beautiful figure wielded the sword in her hands and blocked it. Clang. The saber and sword collided and sparks flew. Qin Pianran's body shuddered and she could not hold onto her sword any longer. It flew out of her hands and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face turned pale as she fell from midair. She was severely injured with a single slash from the Shura. The moment she fell from midair, Qin Pianran knew that she would definitely die today and there was no way she could escape. Qin Pianran tried her best to turn back, wanting to take one last look at Tao Lord Immortal Sword. As long as she could take one last look at her senior brother, she would be satisfied and die without regrets. But when she turned her head to look, her heart gradually turned cold and sank to the bottom of the valley. That sword light had long since disappeared into the distance. It did not pause for her, not even for a moment. The person who said that he would not let her down did not even turn back to look at her. All she saw was a streak of sword light disappearing into the horizon. Chapter 984. Thump. Qin Pianran fell heavily to the ground and aggravated his injuries. His tendons and bones felt like they were about to fall apart. However, it was as though she could not feel anything and was already numb. How could the pain on her body compare to the pain in her heart right now? She was still trying her best to support her upper body. Her beautiful eyes did not blink as she stared blankly at the disappearing sword beam in the distance. There was a hint of indignance, disappointment, pain, and struggle in her eyes. In the end, all her emotions vanished and her expression was numb. The light in her beautiful eyes gradually dimmed, becoming empty and lifeless. When he saw that, Su Zimo sighed internally. The truly heartless one was not Shura, but Tao Lord Immortal Sword who had left. Including the battle at 100 Refinement Sect, Qin Pianran had saved Tao Lord Immortal Sword twice. Even without their many years of relationship as fellow disciples and even if Tao Lord Immortal Sword had no feelings for Qin Pianran, the two lifesavers were enough for him to stop in his tracks and save Qin Pianran at all costs. However, Tao Lord Immortal Sword did not. He only left Qin Pianran with a cold sword beam and a cold back view. The irony was that Shura was someone of the Fiend sects while Tao Lord Immortal Sword was someone of the Immortal sections. Who was the Immortal and who was the Fiend? Yen Beichen failed to slash Tao Lord Immortal Sword and wanted to give chase. However, he stopped after taking a few steps. He had already pushed his sword escape technique to its limits. Given his movement technique, it was almost impossible for him to catch up. At the same time, on the other side of the battlefield, Shura's dharmic body had already sliced the 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics into 2 and strode forward in hot pursuit. Bang, bang, bang. Wherever Shura's dharmic body passed, the ground quaked. Shura's dharmic body was more than 80 feet tall and had huge strides. In a few steps, it caught up to Monk Kongwen. He swung his blood saber. The next moment, a shiny bald head flew up. The moment the essence spirit escaped, it was knocked into Shura's dharmic body and turned into nothingness. Monk Kongwen was dead. Bang. Boom. Shura's dharmakaya took another 2 steps forward and caught up with another person. Then, he slashed down with his blood blade. Tao Lord Fire Cloud summoned his destiny dharmic weapon and roared, wanting to defend. However, in front of the murderous Shura's dharmic body that was more than 80 feet tall, Tao Lord Fire Cloud was as insignificant as an ant. His actions were akin to a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Boom. Both sides collided, resulting in a loud explosion. A terrifying power surged into Tao Lord Fire Cloud's body and caused his body to explode. His essence spirit was shattered and destroyed on the spot. Shura's dharmic body strode forward with surging blood chi and soon caught up to the last person, Heavenly Dipper Sex Tao Lord Breaking Skies. Seeing that he couldn't dodge, Tao Lord Breaking Skies turned around and faced Shura's avatar head-on. Boom, boom, boom. Without their heaven and earth dharma characteristics, their dharmic arts and blood chi could not defend against the killing power of Shura's dharmic body. After a series of collisions, Tao Lord Breaking Skies was covered in injuries as well. His expression was dispirited and his eyes were filled with endless indignation as he roared, "Shura, why? Why do you want to kill us?" Yen Beichen's expression was cold and he did not say anything. He could not be bothered with him. Exclamation point. Before long, Tao Lord Breaking Skies was sliced into 2 by Shura's dharmic body. He died in a tragic manner and his essence spirit was destroyed. It was only at that moment that Yen Beichen revealed a hint of fatigue. This battle had consumed a lot of his energy, mental state and dharmic powers. After the battle, Shura's dharmic body was riddled with holes as well. It only gradually dissipated after he put away the storage bags and destiny dharmic weapons left behind by the Tao Lords. Yen Beichen took out a handful of elixirs and stuffed them into his mouth. After regulating his breathing for a while, his expression relaxed and his face flushed red. Su Zimo revealed himself and walked forward. "Thank you, Senior." Su Zimo arrived before Yen Beichen and bowed deeply. Yen Beichen was not surprised when he saw Su Zimo appear. Given his cultivation, he had long sensed that someone was lurking nearby. "It's fine." Yen Beichen patted Su Zimo on the shoulder and said indifferently, "You came from Misty Peak as well. Since you came to the Middle Continent, you don't have anyone to rely on. I can't let these Dharma Daojun bully you." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he was touched. "Senior, your injuries." Just now, Su Zimo noticed that Yen Beichen seemed to have suffered serious injuries after fighting against the 5 Dharma Daojun essence spirits. "They're all minor injuries. It's nothing." Yen Beichen waved his hand and said casually, seemingly unbothered. Pausing for a moment, Yen Beichen shifted his gaze and saw Qin Pianran lying not far away. He frowned and said, "She heard that. She can't be left alive." With that said, Yen Beichen spun the Shura saber in his hand and wanted to kill Qin Pianran on the spot. "There's no need for that." Su Zimo shook his head. "I understand your intentions, Senior." This time round, the news of Yen Beichen killing Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others would spread throughout the cultivation world before long. The reason why he did not acknowledge Su Zimo in 100 Refinement Sect was because he did not want to implicate Su Zimo because of this matter and cause trouble for Su Zimo. The reason why he wanted to kill Qin Pianran was to silence him. Su Zimo said, "Senior, I've already caused enough trouble. I really don't care about 1 or 2 more. Even if this doesn't happen, what will come will still come." Yen Beichen shook his head. "Right now, you're a disciple of Extreme Fire and I'm the Shura of the Fiend sections. Immortals and fiends cannot coexist. Furthermore, I have many enemies. It won't be good for you if you get too close to me. Ha! When he heard that, Su Zimo laughed instead and said loudly, Senior, I'm now known as a fiend demon by the world. What's there to be afraid of if I'm close to someone from the fiend sex? Su Zimo was filled with heroism. Senior, I, Su Zimo, will remember your help today. Even if you make the entire world your enemy one day, I'm willing to fight alongside you, let alone the fact that you have many enemies. His words were extremely bold, and even Yen Beichen was moved and emotional when he heard that. Alright. Yen Beichen was also an unrestrained and carefree person, as he said, since that's the case, you don't have to call me senior anymore. I'm a person who hates **T etiquette and rules the most. I'm slightly older than you. In the future, we can just address each other as brothers. Su Zimo's blood surged and he wanted to agree immediately. However, he hesitated for a moment and said, My cultivation is too low. Throughout history, there was no lack of cultivators who became sworn brothers in the cultivation world. However, the difference in cultivation between those cultivators would not be too great. For example, Yen Beichen and Su Zimo, one was Jining Jinjuan and the other was Dharma Daojun. Yen Beichen was more than qualified to be Su Zimo's master. It was truly unprecedented for these two cultivation realms to address each other as brothers. Yen Beichen was somewhat displeased and said, Brother Su, what are you saying? I, Yen Beichen, never look at cultivation realm when addressing others as brothers. Even if you're a mortal, so what if you're Jining Jinjuan? Su Zimo no longer hesitated and cupped his fists with a smile. Brother Yen. Brother Su. Yen Beichen called out with a hint of warmth in his cold eyes. The two of them smiled at each other. Chapter 985. Ha! Qin Pianran laid on the ground, covered in dust. Her face was pale and her eyes were empty. Suddenly, she laughed with an indifferent expression. Su Zimo and Qin Chao looked over. A look of mockery flashed through Qin Pianran's eyes as she said mockingly, A fiend demon that kills without batting an eyelid and a cold-blooded fiend are calling each other brothers here. Truly birds of a feather flock together and are a perfect match. Su Zimo shook his head and chuckled. He could not be bothered. Unexpectedly, Yen Beichen did not kill her. He only said calmly, Brother Su, let's go. This person is already dead. She's just a walking corpse. Su Zimo understood what Yen Beichen meant. Qin Pianran was also a pitiful person. Although she was still alive, she had suffered such a blow and her heart was already dead. She was no different from a dead person. Su Zimo and Qin Chao had just turned around and were about to leave when Qin Pianran suddenly became a little crazy. She supported her body with her arms and dragged herself in the mud. She shouted at the top of her lungs, You are Shura. You are bloodthirsty. Why don't you kill me? Just kill me. Yen Beichen did not even turn around. He smirked and said with a hint of mockery, Shura, kill all the people in the world who deserve to be killed. Some people are unscrupulous in order to survive. They deserve to be killed. But some people are determined to die. I won't kill them. Su Zimo sighed softly. Not only Shura, but he also felt it. Su Zimo knew from Qin Pianran's initial sneer that Qin Pianran wanted to die. Qin Pianran had provoked him time and time again. Even if it were someone from an immortal sect, it would be reasonable to kill her. But Shura did not. I know you don't dare to. You are a coward. Qin Pianran suddenly burst out laughing. His voice was already hoarse as he said, You must be afraid that senior brother Immortal Sword will take revenge after killing me, right? Yen Beichen turned around and looked at Qin Pianran, who was covered in mud and had a pale face. He sneered, Stupid woman, do you really think that the Immortal Sword will come to me for revenge because of you? That must be it, that must be it. Yen Beichen's words were meant to be sarcastic, but when Qin Pianran heard it, he seemed to have found an answer. His originally dead eyes lit up. Su Zimo revealed a look of pity. Qin Pianran was infatuated with Tao Lord Immortal Sword. However, That infatuation was heart-wrenching. Time is fleeting, and youth is fleeting. Whether it was a woman in the mortal world or a female cultivator in the cultivation world, the greatest misfortune in her life was to give herself to the wrong person. Qin Pianran said loudly, "I know. Senior brother Immortal Sword did not abandon me. He went to look for help. He will definitely make a comeback. Yes, that must be it. That must be it." As though to confirm that thought, Qin Pianran gripped his fists and repeated softly to emphasize it. Yen Beichen looked at the woman before him who was on the verge of madness and sneered internally before turning to leave. However, the moment he turned around, he seemed to have thought of something and stopped in his tracks. "Since that's the case, I'll make you give up." Yen Beichen said coldly, "I'll open up a cave abode nearby and stay there for the time being. Let's see if that immortal sword dares to return. If he does, I'll kill him." With that said, Yen Beichen turned to Su Zimo and asked, "If you're free, come along as well. I have some cultivation insights that I can share with you." "All right," Su Zimo nodded in agreement. This place was not far from 100 Refinement Sect. If anything happened, he could rush to 100 Refinement Sect to deliver the news. Yen Beichen's gaze shifted to a mountain peak not far away. Without saying a word, he waved his sleeves and swept up Qin Pianran on the ground, speeding towards the mountain peak. Su Zimo sent out a messenger spirit crane to 100 Refinement Sect to inform Dao Lord Scarlet Star and the others that he was fine before chasing after Yen Beichen. The three of them arrived before the mountain peak before long. Yen Beichen waved his Shura saber and casually slashed the mountain peak a few times. As though he was cutting tofu, huge rocks fell one after another. A moment later, a simple cave abode was created. The three of them entered. Azura casually tossed Qin Pianran to the side and didn't even spare her a glance. He sat down cross-legged and started to heal himself. Su Zimo began to set up some simple array formations at the entrance of the cave. The location of this cave abode was extremely good. Standing here, one's field of vision was extremely wide, and one could see everything that was happening outside. If Dao Lord Immortal Sword were to make a comeback, they would definitely be discovered immediately. In the following period of time, Yen Beichen would spend most of the day cultivating to heal his injuries. For the rest of the day, he would explain some of his cultivation insights to Su Zimo without holding back. Both of them cultivated the saber, and Yen Beichen had even imparted the secret skills of the fiend sex to Su Zimo. At that time, Su Zimo's cultivation realm was not high enough, and there were some things that he could not understand. Shura's saber intent was not cultivated as well. At that moment, after Yen Beichen's explanation, many of his doubts were resolved and he felt enlightened. As time passed by, Yen Beichen's injuries gradually improved. However, his complexion was still somewhat pale. Each time Su Zimo asked, Yen Beichen would reply casually that it was fine and deal with it. For the past few days, Qin Pianran had been guarding the entrance of the cave. She leaned against the wall and looked into the distance in anticipation, not sleeping at all. She did not even heal her injuries. She was afraid that she would miss Dao Lord Immortal Sword's return while she was healing. Day after day, 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Over the past few days, many cultivators passed by this place. However, almost all of them were below the Dharma characteristic realm and void reversions were rare, let alone Dao Lord Immortal Sword. 10 days was enough for Dao Lord Immortal Sword to find helpers and make a comeback. After 10 days of sleepless nights, Qin Pianran looked exhausted and her face was yellow. However, she did not give up. However, with each passing day, the light in his eyes dimmed a bit. A month later, that pair of eyes had become dull and lifeless. Su Zimo looked at the woman before him and almost did not dare to recognize her. Initially, she was a flawless and heroic sword sect cultivator. Now, her face was yellow and her hair was unkempt while her body was covered in dust. She could not even compare to a peasant woman in the fields, let alone an ethereal cultivator. For the past few days, she had not even washed or groomed herself. A woman would doll herself up for her lover. She had given up on that person. Therefore, she did not care about her appearance at all. So what if she was ugly or beautiful? For the past month, Qin Pianran did not heal her injuries. Coupled with the fact that she did not sleep or rest, her injuries worsened and worsened. The wounds on her body were already rotting and emitting a foul stench. However, she was oblivious to it and merely leaned against the entrance of the cave, looking into the distance with lifeless eyes as the life force in her body drained slowly. There were no tears in her eyes. There was nothing sadder than a dead heart. Chapter 986. Have you given up? This was the first time in a month that Yen Beichen spoke to Qin Pianran. It sounded cold and heartless. However, Su Zimo knew that Yen Beichen was trying to save her. If Yen Beichen was truly cold-blooded and heartless, there was no need for him to do anything. All he had to do was throw Qin Pianran aside and leave her to fend for herself. Qin Pianran would definitely not be able to last long. There was no need for him to go through so much trouble to dig out a cave abode here and wait for a month. Qin Pianran's expression was blank as she opened her mouth slightly, as though she wanted to say something. However, her throat was already dry and she could only make hoarse sounds. Her lips were already dry and cracked. That slight action caused her lips to split open and flow with scarlet blood. Qin Pianran pursed her lips and drank her blood. As though her throat had recovered a little, she murmured softly, "He doesn't know where I am. It's only normal that he hasn't returned." Su Zimo did not believe that reason. Even Qin Pianran herself did not believe it, because when she said this, there was not the slightest ripple or luster in her eyes, only a deathly stillness. If this was a month ago, Yen Beichen would have sneered and called her a stupid woman. However, at that moment, Yen Beichen did not laugh. He merely looked at Qin Pianran calmly. 20 days ago, I went out once and released the news that you were in my hands." Qin Pianran's heart ached. The last bit of hope in her heart was shattered mercilessly by Yen Beichen's words. A month had passed and no one came. Even though Shura released the news of her, no one came. Right then, the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard from outside the cave abode. More than 10 cultivators were passing by and speeding into the distance. Among those cultivators, the leaders were 2 void reversions, one fat and one skinny. Among the remaining cultivators were Jining Jinjuan and Taoist Master Jin Dan. The formation Su Zimo had set up at the entrance of the cave was quite magical. It was difficult for the cultivators outside to discover this cave, but the people inside could see the situation outside clearly. It's been an eventful period recently. One major event after another. The fat Taoist in the lead sighed and said, during the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, that monster Su Zimo returned and started a massacre. Then, the various great Tao lords rushed to the 100 Refinement sect to ask for him. I didn't expect Hakuei Dojin to appear. He's an expert from 5,000 years ago. What happened next? One of the cultivators asked curiously. The skinny Taoist said, the Tao lords were rebuffed and could only retreat. In the end, he bumped into the titular disciple of the Shura sect, Tao Lord Shura. Who is that Shura? He's a cold-blooded, ruthless, and bloodthirsty demon. This battle is really tragic. Why did Shura seek out Tao Monarch Immortal Sword and the others? Who knows? Shura is a lunatic. No one knows what he's thinking. Perhaps he just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and is looking for someone to test his saber. I heard that Shura has some sort of relationship with Su Zimo. The reason why he killed Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others this time round is for Su Zimo. The cultivators discussed excitedly. The skinny Taoist pursed his lips and his gaze shifted. He paused and pointed not far away. It said that the battle broke out over there. How tragic. I heard that only 2 of the 9 Tao Lord Immortal Sword survived. Which 2? Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Both of them are titular disciples. That's not right. I heard a while ago that a female cultivator named Dharma Daojun from Sword Sect called Qin Pianran is alive as well and was captured by Shura. A cultivator said in confusion. The skinny Taoist shook his head. Can she still be alive after being captured by Shura? I don't think so. The fat Taoist laughed strangely. That female cultivator must be quite good-looking. Otherwise, Why would Shura capture her and not kill her directly? I heard that Shura brought that woman along to force Tao Lord Immortal Sword to appear. However, he ignored them completely, the skinny Taoist said. That's for sure. If it was me, I wouldn't appear either, the fat Taoist said. Who would be willing to provoke that lunatic Shura for a woman? Furthermore, that woman is probably already a withered flower in Shura's hands. There's even less reason for Tao Lord Immortal Sword to appear for such a woman. Silence filled the cave abode when they heard the voices outside. Qin Pianran's body trembled slightly and her eyes were dark. Her sharp nails had already pierced through her palms and fresh blood was flowing, but she did not realize it at all. Qin Pianran spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted, unable to hold on any longer. She was already severely injured to begin with. For the past month, she had not slept or recuperated and her body and mind were already at their limits. Right now, she was only hanging on by a breath of air and relying on an illusory fantasy. However, when she heard the discussions outside the cave abode, Qin Pianran's thoughts collapsed instantly. She was disheartened and fainted on the spot in her anxiety. Yen Beichen was expressionless, but a cold glint flashed through his eyes. The temperature in the cave abode suddenly turned cold and sinister. Su Zimo knew that the group of cultivators outside had already triggered Yen Beichen's killing intent. Yen Beichen stood up slowly and walked out of the cave abode. Right then, the few cultivators outside changed the topic and discussed something else, causing Yen Beichen to stop in his tracks. By the way, have you guys heard? At the Thousand Crane Tea Party, Su Zimo declared war on Diin. A few days ago, Diin accepted the challenge. I heard that the time is a month later and the location of the battle is the Dao Inheritance Ground. However, we haven't heard Su Zimo's reply for the past few days. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and his eyes lit up. Diin accepted the challenge. Initially, he was worried that if Diin was timid and ignored his declaration of war, he would have to go through a lot of trouble to kill Diin. Now that Diin had accepted the challenge, that was for the best. However, what was the Dao Inheritance Ground that the cultivators outside were talking about? It seemed to be very famous. Su Zimo had just arrived in the Middle Continent and did not know much about the various places in the Middle Continent. He had only heard of the Dao Inheritance Ground. At the side, Yen Beichen frowned instinctively when he heard the words Dao Inheritance Ground. Not only is Diin a monster incarnate, he's also a formidable character. That's right, that move of his is truly perfect. By setting the location of the battle at the Dao Inheritance Ground, Su Zimo's advantage is gone. Now, it's up to Su Zimo to deal with it. What else can he do? He can only admit defeat. That's right. I heard that he has just cultivated to the perfected nascent soul realm, and there's a major cultivation realm difference between them. If he enters the Dao Inheritance Ground, he has no chance of winning against Diin and will definitely die. Fufu, he took the initiative to declare war. If he doesn't go when the time comes, his reputation will definitely suffer a huge blow. What should we do then? It's better than going to the Dao Inheritance Ground to die, right? The more Su Zimo listened, the more confused he became. To the cultivators outside, this Dao Inheritance Ground seemed like a tiger's den that was filled with danger. However, it did not seem to affect Diin at all. The cultivators discussed and gradually left. Yen Beichen glanced sideways, as though he could see the confusion in Su Zimo's heart. I'll go out for a while. It'll be quick. I'll talk to you about this when I return. With that said, Yen Beichen walked out of the cave abode in a flash. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.